chair.
Welcome to a Legalbytes presentation of the Alec Baldwin trial. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. If you want more on the background of the Alec Baldwin case, check out our video on it, linked in the description below. But otherwise, you be the jury. Is Alec Baldwin responsible for the death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins as the man handling the revolver that killed her? Or is he being unfairly targeted as an actor who actually shouldn't be expected to be in charge of firearm safety? Tell us what you think. But in the process, the one rule is don't be a dingus. Remember, everyone comes from their own perspective and opinion, and everyone comes to conclusions at their own pace. Agree or disagree, but always respectfully. Okay, let's get into it. All right, everyone, welcome back. Hang on, wait, just 1 second. Let me just double check something. Okay, cool. We should be good with all of the audio and everything. Apologies for the wet hair. I washed it later than I had anticipated today, and it'll hopefully dry by the end of one of these streams. But anyway, usually I try to have a little bit more of a complete presentation. But okay, so we are here on day 2 of the Alec Baldwin trial, where he is on trial for involuntary manslaughter, 2 alternative charges. So it's technically 1 charge, but 2 routes to get there. Is he going to get there with recklessness? Is he going to get there with criminal negligence? Sorry, excuse me. So, involuntary manslaughter. We have a poll in the chat. How are you leaning about his guilt or non-guilt on this particular issue? So far, it's looking like, as expected, or this early in the trial, most people are actually saying need more information. Typical, very common. Even with the the amount of coverage that this case has gotten, that we've done on this particular channel as well. I haven't done as much as some other channels, but I certainly have been talking about it since like the day that it happened. I do remember live streaming it like as it happened and reading articles and all that kind of stuff. So, interesting stuff. Today, we've got the 4th witness is coming back. That is Marissa Poppell, the crime scene technician from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department. She's going to be coming back, teaching the jury more about these dummy rounds and blanks and live rounds and how to tell the difference between them. And she's going to talk about the latent prints and the DNA samples that they did. Then she's going to go on cross-examination and she's going to get grilled on just how much the FBI actually did or what they requested from the FBI and what they could have requested. That kind of good stuff. So I expect her to get grilled. I don't know if this is going to be, if it's going to move the needle all that much, especially because the issue in this particular case isn't so much like the details of like forensic analysis. We know what happened, like the facts of what happened. We know what happened. The question here is like, how do we define the reasonable person in terms of like, inserting themselves into Alec Baldwin's position? Was it reasonable for him to do the things that he did or not? So yeah, anyhow, we'll see how all of this goes. Now, all right. As always, any questions in the chat, tag me or add a bunch of question marks or Q's, and then I will save them. We'll pause. We'll fast forward through all of the breaks. It'll be great. And as always, I will pause for commentary so that I don't talk over the testimony. So, it all kind of evens out in the wash in the end. And also, let me try to get this early in the stream today. If you guys are enjoying the coverage, please do hit the like button. It does really, really help us with the YouTube algorithm gods to bring more people in. So if you're enjoying it, that is one of the best things that you can do to support the channel that costs nothing to you. So, all right, a couple things before we get started. Michael Jones, thanks for the super chat. Are you accepting baby name suggestions? I think Mr. Bites and I have actually decided on what we want to narrow down our names to. But hey, send me what you've got. Jerry Roth, Legalbytes, how can two people be guilty in the same incident? With Hannah being found guilty, shouldn't a civil suit be the only thing left? Well, because you can have co-conspirators in a case. You can have two people doing enough wrong to be criminally liable. So just because one person has been held liable for something, they've been held responsible for something, and that does not mean that someone else also didn't do enough. Like, for example, if you've got two people that walk into a bank to rob the bank, and one person gets held responsible, the other person that walked in there to rob the bank with the gun as well, they still should be held liable, right? We can put this into a different kind of context, and show that there are plenty of situations where multiple people can be held criminally liable for the same crime, for the same sort of thing, because it comes down to, is there an actus reus? Is there a thing that they did? And is there a culpable mental state? Does that rise to the level of what's necessary for that particular charge? So, yeah, definitely. Desiree Bula, thanks so much for the question. Very unrelated question, but do you have a PO box yet, Queen? Oh my God, I don't. I'm so sorry. I don't. I know. This is one of those things that is, I get the question often, and I am so ashamed every single time it comes up that when I don't have it, all figured out. But it is one of those things that, like, it keeps coming up on my to-do list. But I've got to figure that out. That and the Discord thing for members as well. But thank you so much for the question. And let's see, one more here, and I think we'll get started. Sarah Therese, Legalbytes, do you think the defense will try to revisit the notion of Hannah being high and not doing her job properly? Maybe it's not provable, but he could say he didn't know she was unable to work. Fair. I mean, yeah, there could be, if she testifies, especially, there could be a cross-examination of her where they ask her about drugs. If they ask her about other substances that she may or may not have been using at the time. Maybe she denies that, but that at least puts that into the mind of the jury. English bottle cap question. I just started following the trial. Can you provide a quick recap of any highlights I might have missed so far? Oh, speaking of recaps, we are editing the recap for day one. That's going on behind the scenes. I always try to get these out before the trial day starts, but today it was on me because this was a longer recap. Anytime we're talking about opening statements, closing arguments, it tends to be a longer video because we really want to explain these aspects of the trial because they're so important, the opening statement and the closing argument. So that recap from me is going to be coming out sometime today. It's getting edited. It's got to get reviewed and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's going to be the same. If you watch the Karen Reed trial and you watch the recaps that I did on that, it's going to be similar kind of style, adding in some clips, adding in some B-roll and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be coming out soon. If you just want to know the basics of the allegations in this case and the arguments in the case, there is it linked in the description below. There is a I call it my primer video. It's my basic background video. It's everything you need to know about the Alec Baldwin trial. Watch that and you'll get up to speed on the basics of this case. We haven't gone crazy yet with facts in this case at this point, so you have plenty of time to catch up. All right. The Lucian question, Leeway's question regarding defense trying to claim HDR was high. HDR was acquitted of that, though. Would they still be allowed to bring that up? Well, so she was acquitted of evidence tampering. They didn't actually charge her with any kind of possession or anything like that. They charged her with evidence tampering. And so, yeah, I mean, there also was another witness that came in. Well, to bring in another witness specifically for that particular issue would be a little bit far afield for the defense to be able to bring in. It's like you start to get like in these concentric circles further and further out from like the actual issues of this particular case. When you've got more, bringing in other witnesses just for that sort of side issue. But they definitely can, at the very least, ask about it and bring up these other these other potential issues to bring it to at least put the question in the mind of the jury. All right, P PBH. Legalbytes. What is the harshest potential sentence Baldwin could get? 18 months. That's the max, which sounds wild because somebody died in this case. And then also Jerry Roth, Legalbytes off topic, but did you see Chief Rafferty from Canton MA hit a pedestrian with a car and is now being sued? No kidding. The hits just keep on rolling for Canton PD. And I had no idea. That's really unfortunate. I feel bad for, I mean, really everyone involved. That's just unfortunate all the way around, right? I don't wish any ill will on anyone, certainly, including Canton PD. I wish they would clean up their act and maybe learn some things from this trial so far about investigative work into a crime scene. But yes. So yeah, that's really unfortunate. And okay, that's it. Let's get to it, shall we? Okay.
So, thank you. All right. Before, and I'm sorry, I don't. This probably isn't the most appropriate time, but media in the war room or whatever we call it. One more cup. And everybody is not allowed to bring any liquids of any kind whatsoever. My staff is, and our county people are not going to be picking up trash that you all could pick up.
Ooh.
Okay, and that also means downstairs in the jury assembly room. So one more cup, one more water. Let's just have some manners on picking up after ourselves, okay?
Uh-oh.
All right, sorry I had to bring that up right now.
Is this looking still under oath, Judge?
Yes, she's still under oath. Is that okay, or do you want me to?
That's fine.
All right.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Good morning, Investigator Poppell.
Good morning.
Judge.
All right, why don't we look at these now?
Okay.
Is this, are you keeping track?
Okay. Well, I guess we can fast forward through this. She looks very tense. Hilaria looks very tense. Also, if you guys follow me on Twitter, there was a really funny princesses to
Good morning again.
turn around and stop goofing off.
So we saw a lot of pictures yesterday and heard about some search warrants that were conducted that you were present for. And I'd like to sort of divide what we do this morning into sort of two categories, the firearm and the ammunition. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. As to the firearm, I think where you left off yesterday is ultimately that firearm was destroyed in the testing. Fair?
Not destroyed, but broken.
Yeah, you know, the word broken, you know, that
They're gonna go back and
I think I heard you use yesterday. It's fair to say that the firearm can't be put back in the original condition that it was in at the time of the incident. Is that fair?
I believe it could be put back together with replaced parts. But as far as, in my terms, destroyed meaning no longer in existence, it is not the case.
Right. No, of course. The gun and its broken parts still exist, right?
Yes.
But as being part of the investigation and entrusted with the evidence in this case, the gun will never be in exactly the same condition that it was in on October 21st. Fair?
Yes.
Then I want to talk to you now about the ammunition piece of this. And the investigation into the source of the lethal bullet in this case led you to executing a search warrant at Seth Kenney's prop house, right?
Yes.
And you knew that he had provided star line brass silver ammunition to the set, correct?
Yes.
What you were investigating at that time was whether it was Starline brass, silver, and only dummies, or if it was Starline brass, silver, and he also had live ammunition at his prop house, correct?
Yes.
And you did know that Seth Kenney kept live ammunition at his prop house, correct?
I believe at that time we were looking for live ammunition. Yes.
Right, but you were aware of whether you found the exact correct live ammunition that matched perfectly the live ammunition on the movie set. You did ultimately recover some live ammunition, and you had probable cause to get a search warrant, right?
Yes.
And did that concern you that in a prop house that's sending out ammunition for movie sets, that there was both live ammunition and dummy rounds?
Yes.
So I want to take a step back for a second. When you go out to collect evidence on a day like October 21st, 2021, you bring with you your Nikon camera, right?
Yes.
You have gloves with you, right?
Yes.
And in a perfect world, you're trying to get to the evidence and the state of the evidence as quickly as possible. Fair?
Yes.
And so you did respond to this scene, and the first item that you collected that ended up broken was the prop gun, right?
Yes.
And when you got there, you knew that someone had touched it without gloves on, right?
Yes.
You knew that when somebody collected it, they didn't take a photo, right?
Yes.
But you did take that into evidence, and that was sort of the first item in this case that you were collecting and entrusted to keep vouchered and maintained for the course of this investigation. Is that fair?
Yes.
And it was a critical piece of evidence. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And so as you continue after that moment into the scene, you're looking for additional evidence. Fair?
Yes.
And physical evidence is critical evidence in an investigation, right?
Yes.
Because, witnesses and their memories can change. Witnesses can say one thing one day and another day, but physical evidence pretty much stays the same,
I'm
right?
just objecting to a compound question.
Yeah.
Physical evidence stays the same, right?
Yes.
And you logged all the evidence you collected in this case?
Yes.
And all the evidence collected by law enforcement in this case was ultimately logged by you?
Yes.
And by logging it, you also make it available for the defense so that we have visibility into what in fact you collected.
Yes.
And one way you figure out as you're going through a scene what evidence is relevant is you can talk to your fellow officers, right?
Yes.
You can talk to witnesses, right?
I do not. As part of I'm not an investigator, I'm a technician. So my concern is with the physical evidence. I don't do any of the interviews.
No, I know you don't do formal interviews, but in this case, you did talk to Seth Kennedy, right? You're not forbidden to speak to somebody who's at a scene.
No, I do believe we had some casual conversations, yes.
Well, but there are times where a witness could say in your presence, hey, that glove is very important. And they would say it to you and Corporal Hancock, and you would
I
know.
object to the hypothetical.
Overruled.
As I was saying, you went to Corporal Hancock could be at a scene, and somebody could say, hey, that glove was used, and you as a technician would say, okay, that witness is pointing out that glove, that could be important. I'm going to note that, and once I confer with Corporal Hancock, potentially take that into custody to take an inventory.
Yes, that's something that could happen, yes.
And the other thing that you do is, and you talked about this a little bit on your direct, which is you can learn information, decide what to forensically test. Fair?
Yes.
So in this case, for example, Mr. Baldwin's clothes had red on them, and you tested it for blood, right?
Yes.
And it turned out it was movie set blood, right?
Yes.
Meaning it wasn't actually blood.
Correct.
Right? So as you continue through the scene, you get to the prop cart, and you find the shell casing. And I thought this was on just a moment ago.
All right, Joe, come on. We need to fix something.
You're doing what you're talking.
Yeah, it's the fastest.
All right, they're doing some tech stuff. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit.
9.
Whoops, going back. Oh, also,
And I'm putting State's Exhibit 29.
I'm just a minute, Mr. Spiro. I'm wondering if
Oh.
you're trying to figure this out right now.
Okay, we're gonna get a lesson on the whiteboard, which is interesting.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. And I'm showing you Exhibit 29, and in a moment I'll show you Exhibit 28. And this is the shell casing that you recovered in this case that housed the lethal projectile, correct?
Yes.
And so, and in fact, you were able to then recover the actual bullet piece of the ammunition because you learned from Mr. Baldwin that it was at the hospital with Mr. Souza, right?
Yes.
And so you were then able to go to the hospital, and we heard from that officer, and collect the other piece of the ammunition, correct?
Yes.
And that's an example, right, of learning something from a witness and making a decision based on it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as to the prop gun, because you learned from Mr. Baldwin that he just manipulated the hammer, you didn't test the trigger of the firearm, correct?
I'm sorry. You're asking if I myself tested the
Trigger, yeah.
I'm not qualified to do that, so it was not completed by myself.
Well, fair to say that because you learned that from Mr. Baldwin, it impacted the way that you evaluated the evidence.
I object to the form of question. Can we approach?
Okay, so when it comes to cross-examinations, I much prefer a more surgical kind of cross-examination, you know, where you get in, get out, get as focused as possible on what you want to get out of this person. I don't know where he's going with any of this at this point. This is we're gonna fast forward through the sidebar. Okay, oops, sorry, excuse me.
You
But you know, right now I don't know where he is, and I don't know where he's going, to be completely honest with you. You know, maybe it will become clear to me sometime soon when he starts to actually use this whiteboard a bit more. I don't know.
spoke to Mr. Baldwin at the scene, correct?
Briefly, yes.
Okay. And he informed you that he just manipulated the hammer and that impacted your future testing, correct?
I don't recall what he exactly stated on the scene.
Okay. Well, let me just approach you for a moment.
Counsel, I'll need a copy.
Sure. We'll provide you a copy.
Before you approach the witness.
We're also going to need, while they're looking for that, why don't we approach?
It's so often just feels like this is just Carrie Morrissey's courtroom and everyone else just happens to be there. That comment was just an example of that. So, I mean, he's trying to get at something about, like, you know, you interview a witness and that impacts the investigation, that impacts the way that you investigate, which I guess so, I suppose, but like, what's he trying to get from that? I don't understand that at this point. Let's see.
Line, please.
Yep.
Sidebar. Is it over? And let me remind you, this is not like some inept attorney. This is a big law lawyer from Quinn Emanuel, one of the biggest ones. and he's a New York litigator. Like, he's done lots of trials. So, you know, this is not someone who doesn't have experience.
Page in line, counsel.
Yep. Page 3, lines 9 through 11. And I'm showing the witness. Does this, and as you can see from up here, this is a lapel camera from 1021, a lapel recording from. And do you see this answer here?
Yes, I see it.
And so, does that refresh your recollection that Mr. Baldwin told you that he cocked the gun?
I don't recall that conversation.
Okay. But you don't dispute that it happened?
No, I don't dispute it. I just don't recall it.
So did but when you made the request,
Objection, let's approach.
Oh, this I'm getting some a little bit of deja vu from the HGR trial from Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. Oh, and by the way, this is I believe the court reporter here. Some folks are asking. Let me see here. There's a question here. Daniel Nagy, Legalbytes. What if any recording device is being used in the courtroom to transcribe what's happening? I see no strange mask microphone. Court reporter here. This is a different kind. This is the more typical kind that you'll see, which is somebody that is actually typing into like a weird keyboard that is different than any keyboard that you've seen elsewhere. And they are taking it down that way. Andy the Game Maker. Hey, brother. Good to see you, man. Good to see you, big brother. Thanks for the super chat. I remember Lumber Law expressing wearing a tie in their client's favorite color. I guess there are some people out there who really enjoy the sight of dehydrated urine yellow. I don't remember him saying that actually, but maybe that's true. You might be right about that. But that doesn't always happen. That's not always how that gets how that gets chosen. But anyway, so yes. So that's the court reporter right there with the headphones on. And yeah, I don't know. He seems to be trying. But what I was going to say is that the whole deja vu with the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial is you know, when she just was like, Bowles, you don't know what you're doing. Your Honor, may we approach? You know, like just this kind of annoyance of like, ugh, these poor, incompetent people, or not poor, incompetent people, but these incompetent people that are just really annoying the crap out of me. Oh, so Rob does do that. Oh, okay. Well, I missed that, but but that's funny. I suppose that makes sense. Yeah. So, okay, let's see if we can fast forward through this. But also, if Rob does that, that's one thing. This is also a big law attorney. I don't necessarily think that he's going to care about those sort of little things that someone else who has more of like an empathetic kind of connection with their clients is going to have. He doesn't strike me as that type. Okay. Fast forwarding. Oops, excuse me.
Just to go back to the spent shell casing for a moment, was the spent shell casing collected from inside of the church or on the cart?
On the cart.
And another question is, do you know if Mr. Baldwin's fingerprints or DNA were on the trigger of the firearm?
I do not know those results off the top of my head.
Okay. Is there a better witness that may come in to tell the jury that?
Yes.
Okay. And, you know, you were interacting as we were left off with Mr. Baldwin at the scene and spoke to him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And after speaking to him, did you in fact test the hammer of the, did you in fact request to test the hammer of the firearm for prints and DNA?
Same objection. That doesn't lay the foundation. It has to go to why she did what she did.
It's the first question, and then I'll ask why she did it.
Overruled.
Did you?
Yeah, the snide bars are just, they're back, baby. The snide bars are back. We've got snide bars galore. Get ready, guys, for the snide bars for the rest of the trial. It's gonna continue happening because this judge tried. She tried being a Judge Bev Canone, but she did not. And thank you, the Stag. Plug the merch. So yeah, if you guys are interested in some sidebars, not snide bars merch, there is a link in the description below to the merch store on Teespring. So you can buy yourself a wonderful, wonderful mug that says sidebars, not snide bars. Or also, if you want the Bostonian variant, it's just sidebars. Alrighty.
After speaking to Mr. Baldwin, did you then test the hammer of the gun?
No, she didn't. She's not the one that
DNA
tested
or
it.
fingerprints, or request that it be done?
Okay.
The request that was made was after a conversation with the lab, which essentially was asking them what assistance they could provide. I believe the request was made for latents and DNA. I don't recall the specifics of what on the item they were going to specifically test. I don't know their requirements or standards when they receive a firearm. Most labs would do the testing on the entirety of the gun, but they might break it down further and do just the trigger, just the hammer, just the rough areas. I'm not certain. That's a question for their lab.
Right, but I'm just asking you, Investigator Poppell, when you made the request, did you specify, given what we've learned now, we really want you to check the hammer specifically? Did you make that request?
I don't recall specifically requesting that.
Thanks for the super chat, Andy. P's for prosecution.
And when you got to the prop cart, you could not tell from looking at it whether or not anybody had altered or moved any of the evidence, correct?
Correct.
And if somebody did, that would be a pretty serious problem in a case like this, wouldn't it?
It would be a problem in any case, yes.
Did you ever interview or review any interviews of Sarah Zachary?
No.
But one thing that you did know at this time for certain is that you were looking for Starline brass silver .45 ammunition, correct?
At that time, no, we did not know that that's what we were looking for.
When did you learn that?
That was learned later on once realizing that all of our suspected live rounds were Starline brass with a silver primer.
So all of the live rounds at the movie set were Starline brass, nickel primer, live, right?
Yes.
And this idea came up early in the investigation that what if somebody sabotaged the set and put those live rounds there? Do you recall that?
Yes.
And that was quickly dismissed in this case as not something that law enforcement thought to be realistic. Fair?
Yes.
But you also needed to investigate whether somebody from outside of the Rust set was responsible for injecting these live ammunition into the Rust set. Fair?
Yes.
And so you continue to investigate that as this case proceeds and you executed search warrants, correct?
Not myself personally investigating it, but I believe that was something that was being investigated.
So, we looked at, and I'm just going to show you Defense A1. And what's this a picture of?
These were some of the rounds that were located loose on top of the cart.
And these live rounds being loose on top of the cart, you don't know whether those live rounds were there at the time of the incident, right?
Correct.
And again, these were all Starline brass, nickel primer, live, correct?
Yes.
And you were also not certain at times when you would collect rounds, whether or not they were live or dummies.
Correct.
Some rounds you submitted to the FBI to process to figure that out.
Yes.
And if we could look at State's Exhibit 27, can you tell me what that is?
This is a photograph of the silver primers on the 2 rounds that were later discovered to be live that were on the top of the cart.
And so in this box you then collect, which is Defense A2. Right, what was your understanding of this box?
My understanding was this was the box handed to Lieutenant Benavidez that was being pulled from at the time to load the firearm. I was then placed in his unit and later collected by myself.
And when you looked inside of that box, State's Exhibit 17, what did you find?
These were the rounds inside of the box.
And can you tell the jury the significance of that round?
Yes, this round with the silver primer was a live round.
But you don't know whether somebody was rifling through this box and just missed one, do you?
No.
And you also showed the jury that these Starline brass nickel live rounds were found in other places on the set, right? This is State's Exhibit 16.
Yes.
And what is this?
This is a close-up of one of the gun holsters that has a live round in it.
Okay. And State's Exhibit 15.
This is a close-up of the gun holster that was belonging to Mr. Baldwin that has a live round in it.
And was then 15, this is 15. Was 16 the one that was the other actor, Jason Eccles?
Yes.
Okay. And so Mr. Eccles, another actor on the set, turns out that he, as he acted, as he performed, had a live bullet in his bandolier, correct?
Yes.
And you have no reason to think Mr. Eccles had any idea that was there, right?
Correct.
Your working theory, as you evaluated the ammunition and looked at the similarity between the Starline nickel live and the Starline nickel dummies, is that they could have been easily commingled. Fair?
Yes.
In other words, somebody could have mistaken one for the other, right?
Yes.
And so when you conduct then a search warrant on the church, you find additional evidence, right?
Yes.
And you talked about search warrants in your direct examination, but I just want to orient the jury a little bit to what that is. A search warrant is where you go to a court and you swear out a warrant, and the warrant tells you what you can search for inside of a dwelling or a location, right?
Yes.
And you tell the court what information you have and what you'd like to look for. Fair enough?
Yes.
And unlike somebody sort of, walking into the precinct and voluntarily giving you evidence, one of the things about a search warrant is you don't have to tell the person you're coming before you go, right?
Yes.
So as you're going into execute the search warrant on the church, and the warrants in this case, you did discuss that with Corporal Hancock, correct?
Yes, I believe we had some brief conversations about the search warrants.
And the warrant for the church, it didn't indicate that there was any specific crime you were looking for. Is that fair?
I don't recall.
And so when you went inside of the church, you were looking for evidence, right?
Yes.
And you remember, as you ended your direct examination yesterday, Ms. Morrissey, the prosecutor, said, you keep all of this evidence so that if anyone wants to bring any evidence, you have it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things you found in the church was the shot list for the day, right?
I don't recall that.
You don't, do you recall collecting paperwork inside the church?
Yes.
Okay. And
Your Honor, I've already indicated to Mr. Spiro that I object to some of these, so we can approach now. I wish we had dealt with it previously.
Oh my. So, yeah, he did mispronounce Jensen Ackles, didn't he?
no, I think I can just lay it and introduce them.
Well, she said she objected.
So he is not on the witness list, by the way, not on either witness list. So I don't expect to hear from him in this trial. Okay, we're going to fast forward here through the sidebar, which of course was accompanied by a sidebar. Okay, let's go on. Continuing on. Ooh, this is a long one.
Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court.
Okay, so I guess we are doing the morning recess. And we will be getting some questions during the recess as well.
All right, we're in recess.
Okay, so we were only about a minute behind there. So we are definitely caught up and we have plenty of time for plenty of questions. All right. 1 second here. Okay. First off, just because, thanks so much for the super chat. A reminder that high cost does not mean high quality. That is true. That is also very, very true. Does not necessarily mean the same thing as high quality. You can definitely have an attorney that is local counsel that doesn't have the same like on paper kind of what was I going to say? Like, like on paper qualifications, fancy law school, fancy law firms, all kinds of stuff like that, lends itself to a pedigree. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the best for what you specifically need. So it's a good reminder. It definitely is, and hey, again, maybe this has more to do with the fact that this is like non-local counsel. This attorney, Alex Spiro, is from New York. I think Luke Nikas might also be from New York, or is he from LA? It's one of the two. And like the entire legal team is like almost entirely from out of state, except for one local counsel. They've got to have at least one so that they can bring all of them in for like the temporary purpose of representing just Alec Baldwin here. But there could also be some aspects here where people are kind of like losing their footing because they're getting used to the courtroom, getting used to the judge, getting used to all kinds of stuff. I don't know. Or maybe those are just all excuses. Times. Legalbytes interested in Alec interviews. He's basically already testified. Can the defense use loophole and introduce or manufacture other interviews to use his testimony without going on the stand? They not loopholes. They absolutely can bring those other interviews in. They can bring in other other statements that he's made. In the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial, for example, the armorer trial, she didn't testify, and the prosecution introduced all of her police interviews, all of them. And they were bad. They were really bad, including the ones where her attorney was sitting right next to her, and just letting her say all kinds of crazy things that were super damaging to her own case. Alec Baldwin, let me remind you, he's made statements to the press. He had that interview with George Stephanopoulos. I've referenced it in, I think, every single video that I've made on this topic. That part where he says, I let go of the hammer and the gun. I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun went off. And he repeats that. And he, so that's like really damaging to me, but, or in my opinion. He also has other interviews that he gave to the police where he made some arguably even more damaging statements. So I fully expect the prosecution to play those videos, at the very least, the police interviews in court before they rest their case in chief, because they have no idea if he actually is going to be testifying. That call is made at the very end of the defense case in chief. So, if he decides not to testify at the very end, and then they're like, well, we thought he was going to testify, so that's why we didn't bring in any of these interviews. Sorry. Tough shit. to be a little bit colorful about it. But yeah, so they are going to be bringing in those, at least some of those, I would imagine, some of those police interviews, where he says all kinds of things. All right. Let's get to the next question here. Jerry Roth, Legalbytes. Why is the corporal allowed to sit with the prosecutor? Couldn't that be witness intimidation or sway the jury? This is actually super common. Like almost every criminal case I've seen has had like the lead investigator or the case officer that is working on the case has been someone who is sitting at the same table as the prosecutor. I don't, in terms of like intimidation, certainly not witness intimidation, because if you've got witnesses in the courtroom who are watching the testimony, there is a rule for exclusion. They have to have already testified and been released from their duty of testimony in order for them to be sitting there in the courtroom anyway. So in that case, how can you intimidate a witness that's already testified? Or unless you mean the witnesses that are actually up there on the stand at the time. No, even in that situation, it's typical for that person to be sitting with the prosecution. All right. Emily Atelier. Legalbytes, are all those people sat by Baldwin, his legal team? A lot of people. Yes. Those are all people working for that team. He is spending a lot of money on lawyers for sure. So hopefully for his sake, things kind of smooth out a little bit soon for the defense. Because they're leaving a little bit to be desired, to be honest with you. Nick Wilson, Legalbytes, Hannah being called up to testify tomorrow morning. This must have been reported somewhere on Twitter or elsewhere. If you're saying it, let me know where you guys have seen that information if you've seen it. But I bet, Nick, I'm sure you're right about it, that she is going to be testifying tomorrow if that's the case. So, all right, buckle up, guys. This will be the first time that we've actually heard from her, by the way, because she didn't even testify in her own case. Remember. English bottle cap. Surely the whiteboard is unnecessary. If he had done his homework, he could use presentation applications such as PowerPoint. Maybe, but sometimes it's not. Well, okay, hang on. Let me also get this question here, because this is similar. NPC, I'm not. Why is the New York guy using a whiteboard and not Excel spreadsheet? LOL. Yeah, I mean, there are ways to make this look a little bit smoother, a little bit glossier for sure. But, don't knock a good whiteboard. It can still be just as effective. I do think that it looks a little bit messy. It looks a little bit, I don't know, like if it were me, I would have wanted to put the grid lines on there in advance and like use a ruler so that everything is like straight and neat and orderly, because then it just adds to the presentation. But that's just me. And that's just me. But, I don't fault someone for wanting to put something on in real time, because it can also help to draw the attention of the jury to the attorney on cross-examination. So, it is something that is useful for maintaining that attention. when you are doing it, like, with you're moving around the room, you're writing up on the board, like, all big and everything. So, but could he have done it with a little bit more of a glossy presentation, even with a whiteboard? Yes, I definitely think so. Alrighty. Moving on down the line. Dustin Hearing, Legalbytes. First day tuning into this case, but coming fresh off the Karen Reed case, this cross seems rookie league. It does, doesn't it? It does. It's surprising. It's surprising because I expected these guys to be razzle dazzle, right? These are big law attorneys. I am somewhat surprised. Jerry Roth, Legalbytes, do you think Morrissey is getting shut down more this trial than the other one? It does feel like it a little bit. It does feel like it. And I think that they are definitely putting perhaps some better arguments in front of the judge on these sidebars. And the same thing happened with the pretrial motions. Sorry, a little bit of a brain fart there. The pretrial motions, the defense won on some pretty big ones there. So, these actual trial skills are one thing where they're kind of lacking a little bit, but the pretrial motions and the other arguments that they've made to the judge have actually been very solid. So, maybe I looked into Alex Spiro's history and it said that he had a lot of trial experience. So, but I'm wondering now, like, what kind of trial experience that has been. Maybe he's just a little bit out of his element here. I don't know. I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't know. I do agree. Morrissey she's getting shut down more, but that also can change because she also is today, more so than yesterday even, she's also kind of taking control of the entire courtroom again, as we saw in the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial. El Borate, Legalbytes, can you rank these attorneys? Alan Jackson, David Yannetti, Camille, Lally, Spiro, Elaine, and Rottenborn. I would put Alan Jackson and David Yannetti at the top of that list, and Camille up there with them. On the bottom half, well, Rottenborn also was very good. So I would actually pair him along with, not quite at the AJ DUI level, but Rottenborn somewhere in the middle. Spiro after that, and then Elaine, and then Lally, to be honest with you. I would rank Lally above Elaine, Elaine above Lally, because you can actually follow her questions. It's a lot easier to actually pay attention to what she's saying and what she's asking because the way that she asks questions just allows you to continue to pay attention. Lally, on the other hand, is the worst at maintaining any level of attention, in my opinion. Emily Atelier, question, what were the objections to was it getting into evidence not submitted or allowed in? I am so sorry. I should have gotten this question in when you asked it because I don't actually remember what the objection was. There were a number of them here. PBH, is he doing a good job? He seems to be struggling a little bit with this cross-examination. It's definitely going a lot longer than what I like for a cross-examination, especially where the direct examination was so clean and crisp. A cross-examination should be even more clean and crisp. It should be laser focused, in my opinion, just in my opinion. Not every single, that's my preferred type of cross-examination, I should say. And there are a number of ways to effectively cross-examine someone. Here, I don't know that he's actually scoring any points with it. And that can also potentially train the jury at some point that he's going to get up there and kind of bore people to death and may or may not make some points. I don't know. Like, this is different. This is one of the reasons why Alan Jackson and David Yannetti ended up becoming such magnanimous kind of characters in that trial, is because you knew when they went up there for cross-examination, except for a few exceptions when they kind of got stuck in the weeds a little bit, you knew when they got up there that they were going to make some points and it was going to be eyebrow raising. And that was something that they established very early on. Shiro Kana, Legalbytes, how are you liking the prosecution now? Thoughts on the judge? And I missed why the judge decided to do sidebar objections. You said she was trying to emulate someone who, well, I don't know that she's necessarily trying to emulate someone, but it feels like the first time that we had seen that in any of these trials was the Karen Reed trial out of Massachusetts, where Judge Canone said, you can say objection and then you can approach, but you cannot say the basis of the objection because we don't want speaking objections. So that was the first time that we saw something like that. And now we see that in the very next trial that we're watching, which is interesting, very interesting, especially because notably in the first Rust film case with the armorer, the speaking objections got absolutely out of control to the point that it was just that the attorneys were starting to like really bicker and like really just exchange so many snide comments against one another in front of the jury, which was very inappropriate and very distracting, to be honest. So you know, I understand why the judge really wanted to prevent that from happening here. But the thing about a rule is that it means nothing if you don't enforce it. And that has to happen like early on with a judge like this. You've got to just be like, every single time something happens, you've got to say, nope, you come up. Nope. You see me at sidebar. Like, we're not doing this. We're not doing speaking objections. So yeah. Desiree Bula. Legalbytes question: under what, if any, circumstances would you recommend that the defendant does testify? Love to the Bites family and fur babies. Well, thank you so much. Circumstances such as where they are alleging some kind of an affirmative defense. And that there's a very specific reason for that. And that's because the defense then has a burden shift on a part of the trial. So what happens when you allege an affirmative defense, let's say self-defense, Kyle Rittenhouse was an example of that. You have the case in chief, which the prosecution has to prove their case in chief. They have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that that Kyle Rittenhouse murdered, you know, these other one person, and then attempted murder on another person. Or was it two people that he killed? I'm not sure. But basically saying, you know, he murdered at least one person, right? That he's guilty of murder. So then the defense comes back and says, you know, okay, well, we're not disputing that I did X, Y, Z. However, I have a legal justification for it, which is self-defense. If I did not use reasonable force in this situation, I would have been seriously injured or killed myself. And so that's a very valid defense to have. But when you bring up that defense, it is affirmative, meaning you have a certain burden that you bring onto yourself to prove that you, in fact, were acting in self-defense. So when that happens, the defendant then has to testify. If they don't, there's a serious gap in their testimony and in their case to be able to show self-defense. So in those situations, I would recommend that the defendant actually testify, and they better be well prepared for it, because it's going to be very difficult, and it still carries a lot of risk. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. El Borate, over 500 watching and roughly 180 likes, maybe a few more likes to get Mountain Princess 207 to do the celebrate emoji. Yes. Thank you so much for that reminder. We've got over 500 people in the chat right now. If you haven't done so, please do hit the like button. It does really, really help to push this out there so more people can join us for the party. I know there are a lot of people that are streaming this trial in particular. Obviously, there's the usual suspects like Core TV and Law and Crime that do it without commentary. There's a bunch of people that are doing it with commentary as well. So I really, really appreciate all of you guys joining me for this case. And if you can, hitting the like button really does help. If you are super duper enjoying this and you want to know how to support the channel, because these kind of trials and other topics and stuff that we make videos on, they do take a lot of resources, and it takes all of my attention essentially, especially when we are in trial mode and we're doing live streams and recaps and all that kind of stuff. It does take a lot to put on. So the best way that you can help, if you are in a position to support, if you want to, and if you really love the content that much, is to join Byte Club, either by joining YouTube memberships or by supporting on Patreon. Links to both are in the description below. So yeah, if you're interested, that is a very, very big help. But if you're not, no worries, no shade. Hitting that like button is something that doesn't cost anybody. And it does actually really, really help, because the more eyeballs we have on the channel, the more we get through like AdSense and all that kind of stuff. And it helps with drawing in sponsorships and all of that kind of stuff. So it definitely helps us for sure. English bottle cap question: if an attorney ignores the judge's instruction to approach the sidebar to make some objections, what penalty can the judge impose? Well, for one thing, the penalty the judge can definitely kind of start to chew out the attorney in front of the jury. I don't necessarily love it when judges do that. It's not something that I recommend that they do, because that can bring all kinds of other issues with it. But a reprimand in front of the jury can be punishment enough, because the jury tends to look at the judge as like the one person in the room that's not like bought and paid for, right? The attorneys are hired by their clients. They represent one side or the other. Anything that they say is going to be filtered because it's coming from a particular perspective. Even the witnesses that are brought on, right? There are a lot of witnesses that, I mean, ideally you want witnesses that come across as objective, that come across as someone who just happens to have the truth, and it happens to benefit one side, but they're not trying to get bendy with the facts to try to make that, like manipulate that into a particular viewpoint. But the witnesses, or the jury has to evaluate those witnesses to even make that determination. So the one person in the room basically that the jury tends to look at as like someone that they feel like they can trust, other than perhaps the clerk or the bailiff, but they're very closely connected to this person, is the judge. And so if the judge starts to make commentary or statements to one side or the other that seems to indicate some sort of disapproval, we've got a court feed now, but it seems to be still quiet. I don't know that everyone is in the room yet. But you know, if they do, that can create an impression by the jury about what these attorneys are doing. So, you know, if an attorney is doing something that is incredibly improper with, you know, with something like doing these snide bars, the judge can say, no snide bars. You come up and you talk. Like, that's it. So that can be punishment enough. And if they continue to ignore and they're like really getting crazy about it, there can also be a threat of sanctions eventually, but that's really extreme, really extreme. Alrighty here. Oh, look at this. Emily Atelier became a member on YouTube. Welcome back to Byte Club. So happy to have you here. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It really, really does help to bring in those resources for all of this stuff, for all of these trials and whatnot. And you know, we also just had the Karen Reed trial. We've got this one now. We've got another one coming up afterwards. I don't know how long this trial is going to be lasting exactly, but I have seen it. Maybe the end of next week is about how long that should take, according to some reporting that I saw on some statements that the judge made to the parties, which she was like, I don't want this going beyond the 19th. So if that's the case, the following Monday, there's supposed to be another trial starting out of Florida this time. That is the Ashley Benefield trial that is another murder case where she is claiming self-defense. So in that case, I would anticipate we would hear from the defendant. But that one is also nicknamed the Black Swan murder case. I don't know if you guys have heard of that one. So yeah. Anyhow, Emily Atelier, once again, thank you so much for becoming a member. And also, Saturday, 10 a.m. East Coast time, we have a members-only live stream, so I hope you can join us for that. All righty. So it looks like we've got all the questions here. And also Ray Woodward, great mods too. Yes, this is a great opportunity to give a huge shout out to the mods. They are always excuse me, always in the chat and trying to help make sure that the chat environment is as friendly as possible, especially because we've got lots of cases where we are getting into topics where, people are agreeing or disagreeing. In the last trial, I think the vast majority of the chat, I should say, definitely the vast majority, it was like 96% or something of the trial. Every time we polled it, of those people ended up favoring the defense and saying that Karen Reed should have been acquitted. Here, we definitely have a much bigger split, and that comes from a lot of different factors, right? You've got people who are gun owners, you've got people who hate guns, and even just those are factors that can influence how somebody sees this trial and sees Alec Baldwin. He also has been very vocal as an anti-gun person, so there's a little bit of like irony in this case too. But there's also just this sort of philosophical divide between, are the rules regardless of context, or is there an exception that can be made for the fact that this is all going down on a movie set, and this is somebody who is an actor, is the job that he's there to do isn't necessarily one that we would think of that would involve safety, right? He's not the prop guy. He's not, the explosives guy. He's not the armorer. He's there as like one of like the artists, right? This is one of the things that I talk about in the day one recap, going over the opening statements is, the defense is trying to really make this strong demarcation between the people who are on set for safety and the people who are on set for art. These are two different spheres. They're all working for the same project, but those jobs are very, very different. So, this is something that is, a very important question in this trial. It's, I would argue it kind of is the question in this trial. And, so this is another thing that can definitely divide opinions here. So big love to the mods for helping us to make this chat, this whole community, a place where people can bring their opinions, bring their strong opinions even, and do so in a way that is, we can still chit chat about other stuff that's going on, in our lives and elsewhere during these recesses. And still treat one another as human beings. So, here's a question here. Let me see here. Where? I'm always trying to find it. It always looks a little bit different on StreamYard. Dionysia Jaclo, Legalbytes, how many for 250K? Yay, subscribe, guys. Yes, we are very close to, let me see here. What are we at? It actually kind of, sometimes with subscriber counts, it will bounce up and down a little bit. And so with this, we are currently at 249, 228. So I think it was actually a little bit higher yesterday than today. It happens, right? It's like I said, it kind of goes on this, like, it's more like a dot graph than like a direct line that you can draw. But we are less than 1,000 away from 250K. So if you're watching and you're enjoying and you haven't already subscribed, definitely subscribe, because it's, we're so close to that milestone. It would be great to hit that number before this trial is over, for sure. All right. So we've got some courtroom imagery. I don't know. Is it just me, or does Hilaria seem more stressed today than yesterday? She definitely seemed stressed yesterday also. But it seems like she's even more so today. Interesting. Let me see here. And he also has, but I will say, like one thing that is that is so far impressive about her, you know, and maybe this is a low bar, right? But they are a Hollywood couple, right? They've been married for a while. They've got like 20 kids. I'm kidding. I think it's like 7 actually. A lot of kids. And you know, there are all kinds of reasons to have opinions about both of them. And I don't particularly love either of them. But one thing about her is she definitely is ride or die. Like you can tell that she like you can definitely tell that she is very much invested in what happens in this case. I mean, makes sense, right? Like, you know, they are tied together. But when you consider what happens with a lot of Hollywood marriages and things like that, it definitely, the impression that I have at least from yesterday and today is that, you know, Hilaria is she's ride or die. She's not just gonna like walk out because things kind of get hard, you know, like she is very much his partner, whether in crime or not. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about all of that. But I have a feeling we'll be seeing her every single day. Just because he has 7 with her, she's dealing with 8. Yeah. Jessica Sand, I would be stressed too. Yeah, so would I. I also would be stressed. But it feels like she's really wearing that stress today. And when I say that, I don't mean like she's intentionally trying to like put on an image. I think that whatever happened yesterday, maybe something, you know, her impressions at the end of the day, maybe she was expecting more from the defense team, or maybe I don't know. But there is something that does feel a little bit different about today than it did yesterday. As if, like, in other words, like the intensity seems like it's gone up. Sue B, question. This courtroom is very strange. I don't like how the witness has to physically turn their body to address the jury. Alec is moving around to view. Yeah, you know, here's something about the witness turning that happened yesterday with one of the witnesses. It was I think it was Detective Lujan. No. It was Timoteo Benavides. That's who it was. The second witness. He was talking to the attorney, talking to the jury, talking to the attorney, talking to the jury. And that's one of those things that can feel very rehearsed. And you know, it can also get distracting. But here's something though. Depending on the rules of the courtroom, right? Because the judge might say, attorneys, you have to stand over here no matter what during the testimony. If there is not that kind of a rule, the attorneys also can at times try to shift themselves over so that the witness isn't having to look here, look there, look here, look there. Otherwise, sometimes it's almost better to just talk to the attorney. The jury's watching them anyway, you know, occasionally looking at them for, you know, for one thing or another. But like, you know, with every single answer, it does feel a little bit rehearsed. You know, then again, he is a police officer. He's probably testified a bunch of times. He's retired. Sorry, he was a retired police officer. So I would imagine that if he reached retirement, he had a number of times when he's testified in criminal trials before. So, you know, I think sometimes you can give a little bit more with that sort of like rehearsed feel, because it's like that's part of the job sometimes. as opposed to someone who is like just a straight up lay witness. I mean, technically he's a lay witness too, but like a non someone who's not testifying in their professional capacity, but they happen to witness something. They happen to be there for something that was some sort of crucial information. And if they feel too rehearsed, I feel like it's worse. That's my opinion. People might disagree with me on that. But other than that, I mean, this courtroom is actually much more common, I think, than what we saw in the Karen Reed trial. That one was absolutely tiny, absolutely tiny, and totally crammed. And it was weird that the family of the victim was sitting like right next to the defense table. Very strange. But I also understand why they had to have that courtroom. Apparently it was the only one that was available, other than the one where the jury would not have been able to see the face, or at least some of the jurors would not have been able to see the face of the witness, which is a huge issue for the defendant's right to confront all witnesses. The jury has to be able to see their face. Are they, because you can have plenty of times when someone is testifying and the words that they speak are one thing, but the way that they express it, the look in on their face when they express it, might indicate something different than the actual words that they're saying. And this is another reason why people have asked before about like, well, what about transcripts? Why doesn't the jury get to have a transcript when they're going into deliberations? That's one reason why. Sometimes the words on the page can be completely different than the actual impression that you get from watching that testimony. And that's because it's just missing that information. Even if it were, watching, coming down to watching a video of the testimony, we still get a little bit different of an impression from the people who are actually there in the courtroom, because we don't get to feel. Yeah. Sorry. By the way, that is Hilaria Baldwin, who we just saw with the navy blue. I guess it looks like a skirt suit. So that's Alec Baldwin's wife. She definitely looks stressed. This is a long sidebar. This is the Lucian. This is a very long one. Although I think that they also just kind of merged this with like the morning recess. So, okay. But they definitely are arguing about something. I mean, this is Erlinda Johnson. Also, it looks like she's got some kind of a rule book out. They're arguing about something for sure. Interesting. I'm like trying to pick up from body language, but I can't. Yeah, and according to studies, over 55% of all communication is nonverbal: body language, tone, intonation, facial expressions, etc. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Over 55%, sure, I'd say that. Yeah. Shiro Kana, Legalbytes, what was your fave outfit to wear at court? Shoes. Usually it's simple, super simple, because the simpler you dress in court, the less distracting you're likely to be. So, for me, it actually typically would be like a navy blue skirt suit with like just like a simple white blouse, no collar or anything on the blouse, just simple white blouse. And then with simple like heels, either like black or like nude colored. And that usually was my favorite to go into court for really anything. Also making sure that those heels are comfortable, because if you're going to be in the courtroom for a long time, you don't want to be thinking about how much you want to just chop off your feet. So, yeah, but usually skirt suit, like not a pantsuit. I also have pantsuits, but skirt suits is what I preferred. That, I think, honestly is probably just because of the fact that I went to law school in Texas. And so that was like when we learned about trial advocacy and the appropriateness of like wearing certain things in the courtroom, like I remember like the instructors basically being like, Texas is different than say California, a little bit anyway, a little bit, not crazy different, but they were like, ladies, sorry, if you like wearing pantsuits, that's one thing, but if you're going to go into court, especially for trial, wear a skirt suit, because you want to dress yourself to the most conservative denominator, because you don't want to have someone judge you on something that's stupid, because you're wearing a pantsuit as opposed to a skirt suit. That is the most likely to be, or that is the least likely to be offensive to anyone, is a skirt suit for ladies. But yeah. So on Princess 207, do they teach you to wear heels in law school? I would fail that class. No, they don't. Which, you can also do like a very low heel. If you feel like you have to have a heel, you can also wear flats. Like if I were going into court right now, for example, with a big pregnant belly, I would not be wearing heels to court all day. People would look at me and say, yeah, it makes sense for you to be wearing flats. So anyway, yeah, there are also some other like exceptions to it that are always warranted for different stuff. Shirokana, are heels important? I'd like some nice penny loafers and super comfy but still formal clothing. Skirt suits being preferred in Texas is not surprising, but still gives me a mild ick. So heels not necessarily important. You want it to have a clean and professional look as the biggest thing. So I've worn flats to court too. I usually prefer heels, especially if it's going to be for like just a short hearing. And I know it's not going to like really affect my feet, but yeah, about the ick comment, keep in mind in the courtroom, I've talked about this so many times about courtroom fashion, that what you wear in the courtroom isn't necessarily a statement of what we say, should be appropriate in society, generally speaking. I have talked about this a lot. I talked about this in the last trial, how one of the medical examiners had these beautiful tattoos down her arm. And she was wearing like this bright green dress, and like, the dress itself was beautiful, but it exposed this entire arm of tattoos. And I was like, look, I find those tattoos to be beautiful. I don't have any tattoos myself. I never planned to get any tattoos, but I find these to be very pretty. There are plenty of other people who are going to look at that and judge her from the fact that she's got tattoos and that number of tattoos and in that placement. And so you don't want to, like, the whole point here is that in the courtroom, people are making all kinds of decisions. They're formulating all kinds of opinions, and you want them to be making those opinions based on the right things, not the wrong things. And so if you have something like tattoos, it is best to cover those up, because like I said, you don't want somebody seeing those and being like, she's not professional, or he's not professional, or, therefore I'm going to discount what they have to say. All right. People coming back in. Got some more questions here. PBH, Legalbytes, what do you think of Baldwin's body language? Do you think the jury cares? I think he could do a bit of a better job controlling his face, controlling his body language. These are long days. So I understand it's, I'm not completely judging him for it, because of the fact that these are, it's hard to maintain composure for an entire day. And let's face it, he is a little bit older. I'm not saying that to throw shade at him, but he is a little bit older, and that might be even harder for him to maintain his body language there. But also, I will say that given his status as an actor, and as a very well-known actor, it almost is better for him to show a little bit of like, if you're going to have one or the other, genuine reactions where he's making faces and doing things like that versus having reactions that are like overly emotional, that feel like he's hamming it up or he might be hamming it up. I would rather have the first of those two. And that's because at least if it feels like their natural reactions, they're maybe a little bit unsavory, at least he's not trying to manipulate anyone. Like that would be like my own personal impression. I would ideally like to see neither. Stay stone-faced. That's something that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed actually did very well during the trial. Of course, at her sentencing, we heard about statements that she made over the phone during some of her jail calls that were absolutely terrible, that came to bite her in the ass. But during the trial itself, she actually got some criticism about the fact that she was so stone-faced. But to me, I prefer that. I think that's better. It's a lot better to have a serious face, maintain a stone face. Don't have a look of disgust. Don't have a look of disdain. Just serious and straightforward. Sue B, Legalbytes, EB said being pregnant in court was the worst, especially since you can't use the bathroom whenever you want. Ugh, I can imagine. Yeah.
Switch over then.
Harry G, question. I've been called but never selected for jury duty or for the jury. What happens when a juror needs to use the restroom? You can raise your hand and say, I'm sorry, I need a recess. If there is a juror that's having any kind of a problem, especially some kind of a bodily problem, like judges will listen to that. Just make sure it's real. Draco Amy, question, what about makeup? Yes, no, conservative? Yes, keep it conservative. Generally speaking, don't go outrageous with all kinds of colors and things like that. But, clean look. A clean look. You don't need makeup.
Good morning again. So I'm just going to, we're going to tap this or this is not there. Okay.
Also, Perry G.
We left off.
Really quick. We'll get caught up. Don't worry. Perry G, thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. Welcome to Bite Club. Welcome back to Bite Club. You are at croissant level. Very happy to have you back. And thank you so much for supporting the channel. Very, very kind and generous of you. And yeah, you're helping to keep the lights on so that we can continue to pour all kinds of resources into trial coverage like this and other topics in between these trials, because trials don't always happen all the time. This summer is like the summer of trials, it feels like. But there often will be a bit of a gap between trials also when we're just talking about other topics on live streams and pre-recorded videos. So yes, thank you so much, Perry G.
So he's not publishing it yet. I'm just telling him he's going to publish it.
Right.
Okay.
On the way for the foundation. As you stated on direct, and we're just going to put up states 21. If I can publish that, it's in evidence. As you testified yesterday, you collected items from the church that you thought were relevant to this case, correct?
Yes.
And some of the things that you thought gave insight into what happened, correct?
Yes.
And including in those was a copy of the script and the shot list, correct?
I believe there was paperwork that was photographed, but I don't believe it was collected.
Okay. Well, I'm going to pass up to the witness what is marked as A3 and A11. Do you recognize these?
Yes.
And what are those?
It appears to be scene paperwork.
That you collected.
Yes.
And those are fair and accurate photographs?
Yes.
Yeah, offer them as evidence.
I don't believe that's an adequate foundation.
Snide bars.
What more do you want him to do?
But what we discussed at the bench, but I mean, obviously I defer to the court, but I'm relying on the conversation we had.
Well, all right, so they are conditionally admitted pursuant to the discussion up at the bench.
So I'm going to now publish A3. And can you read that last sentence?
Russ Colt cocked quietly now.
And I'm now going to publish 811. Let's see if
this will allow me to
Interesting.
zoom.
So he's getting in notes basically
Focus.
saying these are instructions that Baldwin had for that scene that he was rehearsing that told him to quietly cock the gun.
Can you read that, or does it not?
In other words,
focus
he's
there?
following
I cannot read
directions. He's
that.
following
Okay, I apologize.
instructions.
I'm going to pass it up to the witness. If it's not, oh, it works like this, I guess. I don't know, does it?
So it's supposed to focus on its own.
It's supposed to autofocus, so this is not my fault, just so you investigate. Yeah, permission to approach.
All right.
Macro on hammer as thumb cocks it. And then line 6 is frontal slow push in on rust, his hat down, motionless.
Thank you. And you found and photographed these documents in the church in the vicinity of where Ms. Hutchins fell, correct?
I believe the first photograph, the first paper was, I don't recall where the second paper was located.
And if we look at states 21, I'll have that up on the screen just for a moment. When you collected these documents, you thought they were important, correct?
When I photographed them, yes.
Sorry, I apologize. When you photographed them. And the reason you thought it was important is because you thought it reflected what would have happened in the scene, correct?
I understood that there was a mentioning of a firearm in the paperwork, which is why I thought it was important.
Right, because it's actually just because you thought to yourself at the time and that it actually described what he's doing, right?
I believe at the time, yes.
And you said to your fellow officers that you think it's important because it confirms Mr. Baldwin's statements, correct?
I don't recall stating that, but it could be something that I've stated.
And you indicated that you thought it was hers, meaning Ms. Hutchins' paperwork, correct?
I believe that one of those papers does have her name on it, which is why I thought it was hers.
Right. And the other paper that you already testified to, A3, was found around where she fell, correct?
Yes.
And it contains the shot list and the script for that day, correct?
I don't know
Objection,
exactly.
Foundation. Sorry.
So you have laid
Did
the
you-
foundation?
Yeah. Did you believe at the time that what you were looking at may have reflected things that were supposed to occur in the church?
Yes.
You also recovered Ms. Hutchins' cell phone, correct?
At a later date, I believe.
And that was
Also, sorry, really quick, gonna interrupt. Boy, thank you so much for gifting 1 Legalbytes membership. So kind and generous of you. I know you said that you were doing that. You would do that when we hit 300 likes. So I guess we've hit 300 likes. Thank you so much for doing that. Let's see if we can get to 400 likes. We've got almost 600 people watching right now. So I think we could probably get there. So also, Desiree Bula, you have been gifted a membership by El Borate. So I think that's a welcome back to Bike Club. I think you've been in it before. So welcome back. I'm very happy to have you here. Hope you can join us for our members only live stream on Saturday at 10 a.m. East Coast time. Also, just because, thanks for the super chat. This is not my fault. This is supposed to work the way I want it to. Like client, like attorney. Yeah, sometimes, sometimes people might notice those kinds of things. Jury might notice those kinds of things too.
and to Byron French and the investigation division to extract the cell phone results eventually, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Now, you tried to find video recording in the church, correct?
Yes.
But the video cameras for the scene in question did not record that day, so you were not able to find that. Fair?
They recorded a portion of that day. There was a recording that was recovered.
And you didn't find any live ammunition in the church?
Yes, there was one live round located inside the church.
There was, okay. And where was that found?
That was in Mr. Baldwin's holster.
Right, so, right, the bandolier that we were talking about before?
Yes,
Okay. And you have no reason to think that Mr. Baldwin had any idea that was there, right?
correct.
At that scene, and at this time in the investigation, Detective Khanna was in charge, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
So while you're now then leaving the church, and we're going to move on, okay, you have to figure out how ammunition works on a movie set, right?
Yes,
That wasn't something that you were familiar with before the incident in question, right?
correct.
And you sort of became the subject matter expert on that topic, right?
Yes, I'd say so.
Right. I mean, you were
For
called
the sheriff's
into,
office.
for the sheriff's office, right? But also you'd be called into meetings with Corporal Hancock and the prosecutors and try to educate them on those topics. Isn't that fair?
Yes,
Okay. I mean, you weren't running the case, were you?
No.
But you were there to assist not only with the evidence, but to be a specialist on this sort of unique topic. Fair?
yes,
And again, you said this on direct, but I think it got a little confusing perhaps. But there are never supposed to be live ammunition on a movie set.
Uh-oh. That reverb.
Okay, you need to record that. I think, what are we thinking? Do you think that was picking up?
Oh,
Okay, okay, go ahead. Yours is on though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. You understood that there should never be live ammunition on a movie set, right?
yes,
And the one type of ammunition that occurs on movie sets is blanks, and those are the ones that just go poof, right?
correct.
Okay, and I'm just showing you 8-12 that's in evidence, right? And those have a like a crimped top, right?
Yes,
Okay, as opposed to dummy rounds, right? I'm showing you 8-11 that's in evidence, right?
sorry, yeah, that was feedback, not reverb.
Which look
Look,
like
English ball
real
gap.
bullets, right?
correct.
And there were different types of dummy rounds, as I think you said on direct. But you can't tell necessarily that a dummy round is a dummy round just by looking at it.
Not always, no.
Some dummy rounds have holes in them, right?
Yes,
Others have their primers removed.
yes,
Some of them do not have holes in the side or their primers removed.
correct.
Some of them don't make a noise when they're shaken, called Denex rounds.
Yes,
And some dummy rounds look exactly like live rounds, correct?
yes,
And those look exactly like live ammunition, fair?
yes,
And those type of exact replica dummy rounds were on the set of Rust, right?
yes,
And those were Seth Kenny's dummy rounds, right?
yes,
And in terms of identifying dummy rounds by shaking them, right, which is something you talked about on direct, some of them are louder than others, right?
yes,
Some of them have 1 BB or 2 BBs in them or 3 BBs in them, right?
yes,
Sometimes if you shake a bullet, you can hear the powder, or because of oxidation, you can hear things inside of a bullet when you shake it, right?
yes,
And depending on the setting of something would impact the person's ability to hear it. Isn't that fair?
yes,
So, right, if I shook a dummy round right now in a courtroom in front of a microphone, right, it would probably be, you would be able to hear it. Would you agree?
yes,
But if people are all moving around in a movie set, you don't know that everybody would be able to hear it. Isn't that fair?
not everyone, no.
And some dummy rounds don't shake at all. Isn't that also true?
Yes,
The only way to determine definitively is to send them to the FBI and to take apart the dummy round to figure out what the powder is inside of it, right?
the powder inside of a dummy round
Yeah,
or
I'm
the
moving
ball
on.
bearings.
Well, the ball bearings versus the powder that could be in a live ammunition.
Yes,
right?
that would be the comparison. Yes,
And so one of the questions that I'm going to ask you is there different grades of gunpowder used in blanks versus live rounds?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay. And so as you proceed in this case, you are then executing the prop truck search at the scene of Rust, right?
Yes.
So about a week after the incident, approximately, you go back to the setting of Rust and you execute a search warrant on the truck that housed the prop cart that you found the shell casing on, right?
Yes.
And when you went to do that search warrant, it was light outside, right?
Correct.
And you were with your fellow officers, Hancock, Kano, Sergeant Zook was there, correct?
Yes.
And you had a good working relationship with all of these people, right?
Yes.
And Detective Hancock and Kano, signed off on what you collected as detectives involved in this, right?
Yes.
And Sergeant Zook, who was their supervisor, signed off as well. Fair?
Yes.
And there was a witness there that day that assisted law enforcement with the search of the prop truck, right?
Yes.
A man named Seth Kenny.
Correct.
And not only did he assist, he actually was the one that opened the safe, right?
Yes, he had the combination too.
Well, do you know how he got the combination?
He was the owner of the safe.
You sure about that?
That was my understanding.
You collected dozens of guns from the safe, right?
Yes.
And you understood that there were a dozen plus actors, extras, stuntmen that used firearms on the set of Rust.
Yes.
Just like we talked about with Mr. Ackles and his bandolier, right? A lot of these actors may have at one point or another, unbeknownst to them, God forbid, had live ammunition on them, right?
Yes.
And the prop truck, we can look at A13, was a little disorganized. I don't know if it's quite at the level of the cart, but it was a little disorganized, right?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll just show A14 for completeness.
The Moody Therapist, thanks so much for the super chat. The prosecutor's argumentative, condescending, and I find her behavior irritating and distracting. I don't understand why she believes this behavior works in her favor, or does she just not care? I think that this is probably just a style that she's picked up over the years. She is, keep in mind, she is a special prosecutor. Both of the attorneys on the prosecution side are special prosecutors, and actually both of them in their normal practice are defense attorneys, criminal defense attorneys. So they may have picked up, although Erlinda Johnson isn't like this at all, but Carrie Morrissey may have just sort of adopted this style of litigating as a criminal defense attorney, and maybe it works for criminal defense, but it feels a little different when you're the prosecution. I don't like her kind of snark either, and that's not to say that I don't like snark or spice, right? If you guys watched the Karen Reed trial with me just now, earlier this spring/summer, it lasted forever. You know that I'm a big fan of Alan Jackson. If you've watched other stuff with me, you know that from the Menendez brothers trial, for example, I really enjoyed watching Leslie Abramson. She is not for everyone. People either love her or hate her. I personally love her style of spice and of snark. But there's something about Carrie Moore's style that it doesn't feel like right to me. It doesn't feel like it's I don't know. There's something about it that I just don't particularly like. Maybe this is it, Gwen and Garnett. There's snark and there's snipe. That is a different kind of a thing. Yeah. All right, let's continue.
And inside the prop truck, there were boxes, right?
Yes.
Boxes of ammunition.
Correct.
And these boxes are sort of, a lot of them are the same shape, make, model, white box, right?
Yes.
And I'm just going to show you 816, which is a close-up. And do you notice one box that looks a little different than the other boxes?
Yes, there is.
And which box is that?
The box in the center instead of it being stamped, it has handwritten in blue marker, dummy rounds 45 LC.
Right, and I'll just blow up that, which is in the state's exhibits, Exhibit 19, right?
Yes.
And you don't know who wrote that writing on it, do you?
Seth Kenny.
And if we could look at A22, can you tell us what that is?
Out of context, no, I can't.
Okay, well then we're going to look at A23.
Can you move it up? Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. This is the rounds that were inside of that box with the styrofoam insert that were removed.
Okay. And you see that they are star-line brass, nickel, dummy rounds, right?
Yes.
And again, the difference between a star-line brass nickel-plated dummy round and a live round is effectively that one has powder inside and the other does not, right?
Yes.
And do you know where all the ones in this box went, the ones that are missing?
I do not.
So we're in the prop truck and you have star-line brass, you have nickel primer, but they're not live, right?
Correct.
And you don't know when that box ended up getting to the prop truck, moved to the prop truck. You don't know any of that background, right?
Right.
You don't know if somebody placed that box with the handwriting on it into that Mary Kay bag, do you?
No.
And on the prop truck that housed all the ammunition, was there any live ammunition on the prop truck?
No.
So I want to ask you something, Investigator Poppell. Did that surprise you?
No, not necessarily.
Well, you've got all this, you're finding these live rounds all over the set, right?
Yes.
Sort of seem to be a little bit of everywhere without much cohesion between where you're finding them, right?
Yes.
And they're housed originally in the prop truck, right?
Yes.
And so you go a week later to the prop truck, which has all the ammunition, right?
Yes.
And there's not a single live round there, right?
Correct.
Why did law enforcement wait a week to go to the prop truck?
The search warrant needed to be written. I'm not sure of why the time difference occurred exactly.
Okay. You, well, I mean, the search warrant for the church that we talked about on the 21st, you guys were able to do in one day, right? The same day that the incident happened, you did the search warrant on the church, right?
We did it the next day.
Well, you got the warrant on the 21st, you did it the 22nd. Is
Correct.
that fair?
Yes.
I apologize. So if you could do a search warrant in one day for one thing, why does it take 7 days to do a search warrant for something else?
I do not know the circumstances of why there was that time frame.
And so on direct examination, you pointed out that, and this is States 30. You said that these were the Seth Kenny dummies in the box, right?
Yes.
And you talked about that a bit on direct examination, right?
Correct.
And I think you were making a point that Seth Kenny's dummies look a little bit different than the live ammunition found on set. So perhaps there was a way to distinguish them. Was that the import of your testimony?
Yes.
But if you look at the picture of the Seth Kenny box as it's being opened, right? How many rounds are in there?
So there are 17.
So then how do you explain why there's more rounds in your picture of those dummies taken out of the box?
If I can refer to my report to refresh my memory.
It's fine with me, Ron. It is wrong. Were you able to refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Do you have an explanation for that?
Yes, so I apologize. The photo that was just up of the 22 rounds were actually removed from a bandolier that was located inside of the prop truck.
Defense A26, right?
Yes,
And it has the exact number as the picture you showed the jury, right?
yes,
Okay. And in fact, the real picture of the ammunition that comes out of Seth Kenny's box is this one, A27, right?
yes.
And I saw you counting.
I just wanted to make sure the number of rounds.
Fair enough. No, I think that's a good way to that's how I figured about it. That's the right one though, right?
Yes,
And there's something important about this picture, isn't there?
yes.
Doesn't that Seth Kenny round look exactly like the live round?
Under a camera flash, I suppose it could.
Well, I don't know about suppose it could. I mean, we'll look at the shell casing, Exhibit 28. And we'll go back. A27. We can go back. States 28. Don't you think they look an awful lot alike?
They look similar, yes, but I can still see differences.
Well, I mean, you're a trained investigator, right?
I'm trained crime scene tech, yes,
Even more than an investigator or crime scene tech, right?
correct.
You have your Nikon 700 flash in your camera, right?
Yes,
You have the opportunity to take this ammunition back to the precinct, lay it out, and photograph it, right?
yes,
You have no reason to think anybody on the set of Rust was able to do that, do you?
no,
You turned in your report in this investigation. Hancock signed off on it, correct?
my supervisor signed off on my report.
Sergeant Zook?
At the time, yes.
So we're still on the topic of the ammunition, and you and law enforcement were trying to figure out the source of the live ammunition, correct?
Yes,
In fact, it was incumbent upon you to try to find the source, because if there were people sending live ammunition to movie sets, that would be very dangerous condition, wouldn't it be?
yes.
And as you were going about your search, Seth Kenny actually walked into the precinct one day and gave you ammunition, right?
Yes,
Okay, you remember that, right?
I do.
That was. Did you think Mr. Kenny was being helpful?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, were you suspicious of all of that?
That was not my place to be suspicious of him. I hadn't had much interaction with him.
Yeah, I mean, it may not have been your place to, but I'm just asking you if after this point, Seth Kenny, comes knocking on the precinct and shows you all some rounds, whether or not that
Asked and answered.
I don't believe it was.
Overruled.
I'm just asking whether it's your place to be or not. I'm just asking when the man showed up and just presented ammunition to the precinct, did that make you suspicious at all?
No,
Well, let me ask you this. I bet it didn't surprise you that he didn't turn in the exact matching lethal ammunition, did it?
no, I wasn't surprised by that.
Okay. And so what he turned in, and now you have your report there if you need to refresh, but he walks into the precinct, and this is Seth Kenny.
Ray Woodward, thanks so much for gifting 5 Legalbytes memberships. Very kind and generous of you.
And he gives you two different types of shell casings or ammunition, right? He gives you
Sorry, I'll let him.
Starline brass, he gives you spent shell casings, right?
Yes.
And those were Starline brass, nickel primer, but they weren't live, right? They had been shot or they were spent shell casings, right?
If I can refer to my report to refresh. I don't recall if any of them were Starline brass.
Also, sorry, Ray Woodward, really quick. Thanks so much for gifting 5 Legalbytes memberships. Very kind and generous of you once again. So let's see here. Jamie McGee, Angel Trujillo, or is it Angel Trujillo? NPC I'm Not, One Wanders, Jeff Ray. You have all been gifted memberships. So welcome or welcome back to my club. Very happy to have you all here. I hope you can join us on Saturday for our members only live stream at 10 a.m. East Coast time. So once again, thank you so much, Ray Woodward. Very, very kind of you.
If you turn to the last page.
And this has been summoned by the chat. It has come up. So I feel like we've got to do it, right? We've got to add in some spice of our own to this trial.
Don't be suspicious. 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 Don't be suspicious.
John Ralphio?
Alrighty. I mean, they did literally say it like a half a dozen times between the two of them. So it's only fair, right? So was it suspicious that Seth Kenney came by with a bunch of ammo for them to take a look at and to analyze? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I do think that in the first trial, I certainly remember coming away from the trial feeling a little bit iffy about Seth Kenney and his very, very active role in the investigation, when like he would have definitely had a lot of reason to want to be cautious or want to maybe try to control a narrative as the prop master, or the prop supplier who supplied like almost everything for the set. When something went absolutely south on set with those props, yeah. All right, let's get back to the testimony.
Is there a specific item number that you're referring to?
Item set, I think 215. You're going to be better at determining these reports than me.
Yes.
Okay. And he brought you, again, he also gave you live ammunition with nickel primers, but they weren't Starline brass, right?
Yes.
Okay. So he just seems to have, he just missed sort of on what you were looking for, right?
Yes.
Because you were.
Yeah, objection to the form of question. She doesn't know what Seth Kenney's motives are.
No, I don't. I don't.
What he's
Overruled.
I mean, you know that if Seth Kenney provided the live ammunition to the set, that's worse for Seth Kenney, right?
It's worse for whoever provided it. Yes.
I agree. So, but as members of law enforcement, you all know that the person who provided that would have a motive to not be found. True?
Yes.
So you headed to execute a search warrant at Seth Kenney's prop house, right?
Yes.
And a judge signed off on that search warrant, correct?
Yes.
Because you had probable cause to believe that there was live ammunition that matched the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins, right?
Yes.
And this was you and again, Detective Hancock and Sergeant Zook, right?
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, how come you executed the search warrant at night?
I don't recall.
And I wanted to ask you, how come Detective Kano waits outside?
I don't believe that Detective Kano was there the entirety of the search warrant.
So, well, while he was there, do you know why? Do you have any information as to why he didn't come inside?
I do not.
Before you went on the search, you discussed it with Detective Hancock, correct?
Yes.
And just like the truck we talked about, you all had done nothing to secure this prop house while before you got the search warrant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And tell the jury, how long did you wait to execute the search warrant at the prop house?
I don't recall.
Well, on direct examination, you knew the dates right away. Don't you remember? You nailed it.
Oh,
10/27, November 30th. Right?
I apologize. I thought you were asking from when it was written to when it was executed.
Oh, no, I apologize. Yes.
We executed the search warrant on November 30th.
Okay. So that was a month and a week at least, right? After the incident in question.
Yes.
Okay. And just like the truck, you're executing the search warrant, and who was there to help you?
Seth Kenny.
And your purpose was to find the matching ammunition, correct?
Our purpose was to locate any .45 caliber live ammunition.
Well, sure, but the ultimate investigation that you all were conducting was to try to solve the open question of how the lethal round got on a movie set, right?
Yes.
And you talked a little bit about this when we talked about the prop cart, how the disorganization of it could lead to commingling, right?
Yes.
How was the organization of the prop house?
Some things were organized and some were not.
Well, if you could give us a sense, did you find it to be more organized than the cart or less organized than the cart?
I would say they're probably about equal.
And you knew, did you not, that a dummy round can be turned into a live round and a live round can be turned into a dummy round, correct?
Yes.
So a person with spent shell casings or dummies, they could reuse them, correct?
Yes.
That would be economically efficient, right?
Yes.
And you knew as you enter this search that some of the ammunition on the set of Rust definitely came from Seth Kenny, right?
Yes.
He admitted that, right?
Correct.
There were invoices he didn't have much of a choice, correct?
Yes.
And you were also looking for tools that could be used to manufacture dummies and live ammunition, correct?
Yes.
And you were also looking for a green ammo can, correct?
Yes.
You know, the white boxes that we keep looking at are, they look like each other, right?
Correct.
A green ammo can is a more unique item, fair?
Yes.
So why don't you tell the jury why you were looking for a green ammo can?
I don't recall specifically, other than at some point in time it had housed live rounds.
And law enforcement had that information at the time of going to a judge to get the search warrant and very much at the time that they were executing the warrant, right?
Yes.
And I don't want to belabor the white box conversation too much, but other than, I'm going to have to find it too, on the white boxes that you found at the set, and at the white boxes that you saw a lot of at Seth Kenny's, there were these initials in the middle of the white box. It said JS. Right? I'll just show you A2. Yeah. Right, that you found at the scene, correct?
Yes.
And if we look inside of Seth Kenny's prop house, A18, you see very similar font and signage, correct?
Yes.
And as you continue on in your search, you understood Seth Kenny was a person of interest, correct?
Yes.
And this was an important moment in the case, correct?
Yes.
And you even found out that the day before Seth Kenny provided the dummies to Rust, he had in his possession live Starline brass nickel primer from 1883, correct?
I don't recall it being the day before or having that information personally.
Well, so let's leave the day before right now. You knew and understood that Seth Kenny had recently been in possession of Starline Brass Nickel Primer Live, correct?
I don't know that it was that specific, just that he was in possession of live ammunition in a recent point.
Now, when you testified on direct examination, you told the jury about how you found some live ammo at the prop house, right?
Yes.
And how you took that live ammo and sent it to the FBI, right?
Yes.
And you sent the live ammo from the set of Rust to the FBI, right?
Yes.
And you're not an FBI agent, but what you told the jury was that when you compared the powder from the set of Rust's ammunition to Seth Kenny's live ammunition, they didn't look the same, right?
Correct.
And you testified previously. Well, let me just ask you, did you take all of the 45 live ammunition from PDQ into evidence?
Yes.
And did you search every single box inside of Seth Kenny's prop house?
Yes.
And because you did that, according, is this still, what is that? Did I do something? No. Oh, it just goes to sleep. Talking too much.
Yeah, you might be talking a little bit.
And because you've told this jury now that you found every 45 live ammo there, correct?
Yes.
And that you searched every single box, correct?
Yes.
What you're telling this jury is they can be sure that if there was a live round on there that matched the set of Rust, you would have found it, right?
Yes.
Let's take a look at A19. Is that one of the rooms inside of the prop house?
Yes.
You see those boxes packed all the way to the ceiling?
Yes.
Did you all have a ladder or anything when you guys were searching?
No.
Okay. So can we agree that you didn't search the boxes at the top?
I believe they were taken down or at least looked into. It was not just myself searching.
Right. Well, we talked about it. It was Kana was outside. It was you and Hancock and Zook, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, tell the jury. I mean, did you or did you not search every single one of those boxes?
We searched the entirety of the property. Yes.
Well, what do you mean when you say that you searched the entirety of the property?
I mean, if a box is opened and it is clear that there's no ammunition in it, meaning if I open a box and it's all clothing and I look at the bottom of the box and it's all clothing, then we're not going to dump the box out on the floor and continue to shake it until rounds that aren't in there fall out.
Well, she's definitely getting frustrated. And I will say this is cross-examination. She's been sitting there for a while. She's probably feeling a lot like he also has, before this point, he's really gone into things that she doesn't, I don't know. It seems a little strange to go into with this particular witness. She's a crime scene tech. She's not a detective. She's not really making a lot of decisions that seems to be, I don't know. She's not making a lot of these decisions that he seems to be wanting to get out of her. I think that a lot of the stuff that he's asking about could be maybe better directed towards a different witness. And so she may just be feeling irritated and frustrated at this point. And I know that there are people in the chat that are commenting on her tone and all of that. I would say if there was a sudden change from direct examination to now I'm on cross examination and there's a like a light switch that has changed, I would be more critical of that. But she has been sitting there for a long time. She's been sitting in the hot seat for a long time, and so I can also understand why someone would start to get annoyed at a certain point. And you know, cross-examination is always going to be putting someone on the defensive and all of that. But you know, is it better for her to keep her cool? Of course. Hazo1, thanks so much for being a member for 22 months and also one of our awesome mods for the channel. Like and sub for all of Alita's hard work. Thank you so much. I say as I yawn because I forget to breathe. Happens all the time, especially lately. Thank you so much for that. And yes, if you guys are enjoying the coverage of this trial, definitely like the video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We are very, very close to 250,000 subscribers, so it would be great to hit that during this trial. All right.
But, okay, sure. Were there any boxes like that?
There were a multitude of boxes.
Got it,
That was
got it.
a little.
So,
that was definitely a
Are you
snarky
telling this jury that
response.
you're on your oath that you searched every single box in this room? That's just all I want to know.
Not me personally. Our team reasonably searched the warehouse.
Okay, and I think we're getting closer to, when you say reasonably searched, what do you mean by that?
I mean, how would you approach searching this kind of area?
That's not
Well, I can tell you that law enforcement, I know from the
proper
movies.
response.
Okay, I'll move on. Well, why don't you tell me, what's a grid search?
A grid search is usually conducted outside, where you would reasonably set up in a way that you could grid an area and then search each section on that grid.
Okay, and well, why don't you tell me, what would have been, if you wanted to be certain, the best way to search this room if you had unlimited resources and time?
I believe that when we searched this room, we divided the room in order for it to be searched.
Divided it how?
Meaning myself took one section, Sergeant Zook took another section, Detective Hancock took another section.
Are you certain of that, or are you best estimate that that's what your memory tells you?
I do not recall exactly how the room was searched.
Okay, and then let's say you open up a box with ammunition. How would you search an individual box?
It would depend on the box.
So tell me.
If we open a box and it's all 38s, we're not looking for 38s at that time, we're looking for 45s.
Okay. And so if you opened up a box and it was commingled rounds, how would you do it?
We would have to go through those rounds individually.
Right, and there were boxes like that here, right?
There were a few, yes.
Okay. And how many rooms were there inside of this location that had lots of boxes in them?
There was the back room that we see here. There was a front room that didn't have many boxes, and then a side room that had nicely organized boxes.
And what about the bathroom? Weren't there boxes and ammunition in the bathroom?
There were boxes in the bathroom, yes.
So 4 rooms, right?
Yes.
3 of you, 4 rooms, right?
Yes.
A20. What are we looking at here, Investigator Poppell?
This was a table that was located in the side room.
Okay. And what do you notice? I don't know why that arrow's there. What do you notice on this? It's probably because of me. What do you notice on this table of, here, thank you, sir. What's on this table? What is this?
There were plastic bags, tools, cleaning products, tape.
Okay. And as we talked about before, the search warrant told you to look for tools, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Detective Hancock spent some time in this room during the search, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And do you know what all these tools are? Do you have familiarity with these tools?
I'm not, no.
Okay. You don't know what they can be done. You don't know how they can be used with either firearms or ammunition, do you?
No.
Okay. So tell the members of the jury which of these tools you seized.
We did not take any tools from the warehouse.
When you were searching this area, did you have a schematic or a floor plan?
No, I don't believe so.
Did you go one room at a time, or did you split up?
I don't recall.
Was there a predetermined plan of how to search this and to confirm that there were no further live bullets?
The predetermined plan was that I went in myself first and did overall photographs of everything in place, and then we conducted the search.
Did you do those letters like we saw in the prop truck so you could keep track of everything? Remember when we were looking in the church that there were those letters up so that you could sort of keep track and make sure you got everything? Did you use those letters?
No, I did not.
And of course, Seth Kenny was there and being helpful again, right?
Yes.
He told you that there were no 45 long Colts there and offered to show you the dummy rounds at one point. Do you remember that?
I don't recall that.
Do you remember him saying, I bet you $1,000 there's no 45 long Colts in there?
I do recall that, yes.
Okay. And did he win the bet?
He did not.
He lost the bet. So he tells you that, and law enforcement continues, and you look in the bathroom, and you found him, right?
Yes.
Let me ask you something. At any point, did you become suspicious of Seth Kenny?
No.
A21. You were able to find this container that says live ammo on it, right?
Yes.
And that was helpful to whoever wrote that to show you where the live ammo was, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's one of the reasons you looked in that bin. Somebody labeled it live, right?
Well, we were looking in all of those bins, yes.
Every single.
I believe there was camera equipment stacked on top of it.
Right.
And when they're opened and you see that it's camera equipment, we close it back up and went to the box on the bottom that stated there was live ammo in it.
Doesn't this handwriting and label look kind of like that dummy round label we saw on the box that had that round you and I looked at? States 19.
Yes, it is similar, yes.
And that box that had the live rounds in it, there were a couple things that you found at PDQ. This handwriting is getting worse. Right? At PDQ, you found, and that's the prop house. That's the name of the prop house, right?
Yes.
Okay. You found, bless you, Starline Brass Live, no nickel, and you found Starline, you found nickel primer lives, no Starline Brass, right?
Correct.
Every time you were with Seth Kenny, you got close to finding something that matched the scene, Starline Brass, nickel primer live, but it was always one off, wasn't it?
Yes.
Here's the issue for me with this very long drawn out cross-examination is Chelsea, even if he is suspicious, does that make a difference in AB's responsibilities? Genuine question and no snark. That is a bit of an issue for me too here is, he's trying to get at the police maybe not doing the most thorough investigation that they could do. They trusted Seth Kenny when maybe they should have been suspicious of him. There are things that they could have done, but all of this cross-examination would have made more sense in the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial, right? Where there was a question of who brought the live rounds on set that was related to whether or not Hannah Gutierrez-Reed had done what was responsible in terms of, maintaining the firearms and the ammunition as she was supposed to as the armorer. If there was someone who was undermining her responsibilities, it kind of made sense for that to be a bit of a focus, even though, at the end of the day, it's like whether there are live rounds that made it on set or not, you still are supposed to that's still your job is to check the gun and make sure that there are no live rounds in that gun. So even in that case, but here it feels like it's even more remote here because no one has any kind of a question of Alec Baldwin bringing live rounds on set. There's no one is asking that. No one thinks that. No one is pointing any fingers at him for that. So it does feel a little bit quixotic for the defense team here to be focusing on that so much because it's like they're they are searching for searching for ghosts, it seems like, when it really doesn't have all that much to do with Alec Baldwin and whether or not he did what he was supposed to do. So, I understand making the points and making the arguments, but the amount of time that he's spending on this just feels very wasteful in comparison to like what he could be doing. And the issue with that is the jury is going to start to be trained early on. If he continues to do this kind of a thing, the jury is likely to start to learn from that, to say, okay, he's kind of going to get into a lot of stuff that we don't really care about, or that doesn't seem relevant, or that I don't really know where he's going with it, which is not great, because that can lead them to start turning off their attention from what he's saying.
And as you continued on your search, you found the green ammo can, right?
Yes.
And again, it was helpfully labeled, right?
Yes, I believe it was behind that box. I think you weren't able to obviously see it.
I see. But it also had a helpful label on it, didn't it?
Yes.
It said empty, right?
Yes.
And it looks a lot like the handwriting in States 19 and the helpful handwriting at A21 that says live, right?
Yes.
And it was taking a long time to go through those boxes, wasn't it?
Yes.
And Detective Hancock was wearing her lapel camera, right?
I believe so, yes.
Have you reviewed that camera?
I have not.
You remember you and you said to Detective Hancock, this is taking a long time. We really need a spa day.
Objection relevance?
What's relevant?
The
What's relevant?
relevance
Does it
is
have
that
any
it's-
more tendency to?
Sure.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. Did you and Detective Hancock start joking around that it was going to take too long to search every box?
I don't recall that.
Do you deny it?
No.
And there were times in this search.
I mean, I get what he was trying to say with that, but like, hot damn, that was a little spicy. It is somewhat relevant, I guess, to say that that she, during the search, she was saying that there was just too much to do and they were getting tired of it. I mean, looking at the number of boxes there, I don't know. I guess I don't really judge that all too much, but interesting. But it does look a little bit unsavory to bring up that specific comment. El Borate, Legalbytes, 8 to go to 400. Let's go. If you guys are liking the stream, we are 8 likes away from 400. So definitely hit the like button if you haven't done so already. So we can grow that number into I don't know, infinity. Thank you guys to everybody who has hit the like button so far.
Where you pick up a box and you just shake the whole box, right?
I don't recall that.
Can we play that video?
I'm confused. Is he refreshing or is he impeaching?
It doesn't matter. It's just a video. It's not a statement.
No, it does matter because she said she doesn't recall.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Do you deny in parts of your search just picking up a box and shaking it to see if it shook or not? Do you deny that?
No.
And so, but if you shook an entire box to see if it had a rattle in it, you wouldn't be able to be sure whether or not every single live round, it was all live rounds or a commingled group, correct?
Correct.
In fact, that's the entire basis of the case of what you believe the armor agent to have done. Commingled, live, and dummies, right?
Yes.
And yet at the search being conducted to find the source of the lethal round, law enforcement is doing the very same thing that you're complaining about the armorer doing on the set, right?
Yes.
And when you left that search, you are not, as you sit here, sure you got every live round, are you?
No.
And actually, if you look at the boxes inside of that location, you didn't even search half of them. Did you?
I don't recall.
So then why on direct examination, if you do not recall, did the prosecutor ask you and you tell this jury that you were confirming that you searched and found every single live round? Why did you testify to that?
I found what I believe to be all the live rounds at the warehouse.
But that's not what you said. What you said was that you found every live round, right?
I don't recall the exact words that I stated.
Well, you certainly said that you searched every single box just 10 minutes ago in front of this jury, right?
I believe that a reasonable search was conducted of the warehouse.
An investigator, I understand you were prepped before you testified today, correct?
I spoke with the prosecution before I testified yesterday.
Okay. And the jury heard something about pre-trial interviews where you're interviewed and the defense can be there to watch you be interviewed, right?
Yes.
But every time you talk to the prosecutors, defense is correct.
Correct.
In fact, the vast majority of times you speak to the prosecutors, the defense is not there, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you and I had never met before today, or yesterday, I guess, correct?
Yes.
So, okay, I feel like it took a long time.
It's been 84 years.
Feels like it's been 84 years, but he finally got there. He finally got there where he got her to admit that when she searched for the live rounds at PDQ, prop and arm, that that she doesn't really know if she got all of the live rounds there. So she doesn't really know if the live rounds on set aren't a match to any live rounds at PDQ, because they found a handful, but they don't know that they got all of them, because looking at those photos, how can you possibly, conclude that unless you actually meticulously checked? I mean, that is an absolute nightmare of a search to do. But do I think that he could have gotten there a lot sooner? Yes, 100%. Absolutely. I feel like we got hours of testimony that was kind of wasted here, where he was trying to like, I guess, grind her down. I mean, sometimes there are benefits to having a longer cross-examination by wearing down a witness until they finally just don't fight you anymore. But this particular witness, she's not a particularly difficult one to cross-examine, in my opinion, or to talk to. Like, you could also have gotten there with charm and charisma, rather than just kind of grinding her down with question after question after question. Because the problem with that is you might also be grinding down the jury so that they're not paying attention to what you're actually saying. So he got there after a very long time and made this whiteboard chart that I'm not quite sure why he felt like he needed to do that. It's almost like that was a way to retain some of the attention from the jury. It's just so that they don't get lost in a sea of questions about stuff and questions about searching for rounds here and rounds there. They can kind of track where he's going, or where he's been, at least, of the different places that they searched for live rounds. But I feel like he didn't need to do all of that. He could have just said, okay, let's talk about Seth Kenney. You guys essentially trusted him because you guys were working with him really closely. He was here, he was there. He actually unlocked the safe for you guys. Okay. And then you actually searched his thing and you waited a month and a week or a month and a day or whatever it was. And then you searched it. And oh, by the way, he also helped you out there too. And then, and then you show photos of of all of the boxes and all the junk that he has at the prop house. And then you just go in and say, how long did you take to actually search this place? When you started, when did you get there, and when did you leave? What time? How many hours was this? Because looking for teeny tiny little live rounds in these big, this is like a needle in a haystack in this kind of a place with that much stuff there. So, he could have made that point in like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe, rather than hours and hours of testimony. Okay. Anyway.
So you just said, when you originally said that you searched every box, okay, that itself is not accurate, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So now what you're saying is that you did a reasonable search, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing that the search warrant asked you to take was the cameras and the camera equipment, the surveillance footage from PDQ, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay, I'm going to pass up the warrant to refresh your recollection. Well, do you recall that there was camera equipment there?
There was lots of camera equipment inside of the warehouse.
In fact, you remember Seth Kenny showed you the camera equipment, right?
I don't recall exactly.
Okay, I'm just going to mark this as defense Z and just approach just quickly.
I'm sorry, is that a still frame from the Oh, yeah, sure.
Are you going to mark that? Well, she's going to identify it and then you're going to.
I'm just going to see if it refreshes. Okay. Does that refresh your recollection about the?
No, it doesn't.
Take it back.
Womp womp.
And I'm
Sorry,
going to
nice
pass you
try.
the warrant and ask you, this is DX23, if this refreshes your recollection of if you were supposed to.
DX23?
Yes.
What?
Yes, Your Honor, DX23. Oh.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I need to know.
No, I need to refresh.
It's just a refresh. I can make it DX
So,
any number.
but why are we marking it?
Yeah,
It's
why are
just
we
being
marking
used
it?
to refresh.
And I will mark it.
Yes.
Unmarked.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not seeking to introduce this. I'm just simply asking, does this refresh your recollection that the warrant commanded you to take the video footage? Number 6.
She can refresh her memory without being directed.
Of surveillance footage, yes.
Okay. And so, can you tell the jury, did you take the surveillance footage?
No.
Really quick, because this is a question that is relevant to the here and now. What is the marking all about? Why is that important? Albright, thanks for the question. So this is, so when we're talking about marking some of these documents, we're talking about admitting them into evidence. And this is I believe a search warrant that he was putting in front of her. And the whole purpose of putting it in front of her was to refresh her recollection, not to admit it into evidence. And the issue is that document is completely hearsay. It's not admissible. You cannot admit that into evidence unless you're admitting it for some other completely unrelated reason. But yeah, so essentially the prosecution and the judge both telling him like, no, you can't mark that. You can't admit that into evidence. Then he kind of backtracks and says, I'm not marking it. I promise, that's what that was all about.
You didn't take the surveillance footage, even though that footage could have shown when people came and left the prop house, correct?
I don't recall if there was surveillance footage.
And the photograph of Mr. Kenny showing the surveillance footage didn't refresh your memory?
No, because I'm standing in the foreground of that photo.
Okay, well, tell the members of the jury what you did to search for surveillance videos that satisfied you that you had complied with the warrant's order. Tell the jury.
I don't recall looking for surveillance footage.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Because you didn't, right?
I don't recall.
But if you did, it would be on the lapel cameras of Detective Hancock and Sergeant Zook, right?
Yes.
And so if it's not on the lapel cameras of Detective Hancock and Sergeant Zook, you would agree with me it didn't happen, right?
Not precisely. They don't follow me around the entire time, and I don't wear a lapel, so it could have not been captured.
But you're not telling this jury that you looked for it, right?
I'm saying that I don't recall looking for it.
And if you had taken that footage, if any there were, right, you agree with me that it would have shown when people were coming and going from the prop house, potentially, correct?
That's a possibility, yes.
It's a possibility you could have seen when the ammo can got there, right?
Possibly, yes.
You could have seen Sarah Zachary picking up the ammunition, correct?
Possibly, yes.
You could have seen Seth Kenny disposing of ammunition in the 40 days between when the incident happened and when you arrived, correct?
Possibly, yes.
And there's one other thing that it would have shown, isn't there?
I don't know.
Well, it would have shown whether or not you all really searched the place, wouldn't it?
Possibly, yes.
And so you didn't take it. You did not voucher any of the surveillance footage.
I do not recall looking for the surveillance footage.
Well, again, I know that answer, but you know what you vouchered in this case, correct?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
You didn't take into your custody and add to the evidence any surveillance footage, correct?
No.
And you never spoke to any witnesses, you yourself, about what you found at PDQ later, did you?
No.
And you testified on direct examination that you did collect DNA, phones, prints, things like that in this case, right?
Yes.
And you got the armorer, the first assistant director, Dave Hall's, Sarah Zachary, and Alec Baldwin's phones, right?
I did not. I don't believe so.
You ultimately vouchered?
I would have to refer to my report. I don't believe I collected all of those things.
Okay. What about DNA extractions?
I did collect DNA swabs from certain individuals, yes.
Okay. Including Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, Dave Halls, Sarah Zachary, Alec Baldwin?
Not Alec Baldwin, but the rest.
Okay. And what about prints? Fingerprints?
Yes.
Okay. From Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, Dave Halls, Sarah Zachary?
Yes.
Okay. Did you take the cell phone of Seth Kenny?
I don't believe so, no.
Did you take the prints of Seth Kenny?
No.
Did you take the DNA of Seth Kenny?
No.
Everything that you did take into your custody, in law enforcement's custody in this case, is in your supplemental report. Is that fair?
Yes.
And most importantly of all, it's your testimony you never were able to discover the source of the live ammunition, correct?
I don't believe that's in my supplemental report. I'm not sure how you're phrasing that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. I'm asking you. When we started, we were talking about solving this question of how a live round got on a movie set. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm asking you, trying to solve that question, did you ever solve it?
I do not have any physical evidence to show where the live rounds originated from.
And I was asking you questions earlier about how come the search happened at night, right?
Yes.
Do you remember?
I don't recall.
Okay. Why Detective Cano stood outside?
I don't recall.
Okay. Isn't the truth that you were just trying to get this over with so that the prosecutors could focus on Alec Baldwin?
No.
You personally believe Alec Baldwin committed no crime. Isn't that the truth?
That's
No.
irrelevant.
Your Honor, please, can we approach?
That's completely irrelevant. That's not for her to decide. Her opinion does matter on that.
Don't do that. I'm going to strike that question, okay? I'm going to strike the question. You're going to disregard it, okay?
Agreed.
And the answer.
Agreed.
There is zero evidence.
Agreed. Her opinion on whether or not Alec Baldwin committed a crime, that's completely irrelevant. And that's also a highly improper question to put in front of the jury. So, the fact that the judge was even like, all right, we don't even need to do a sidebar. Don't do that.
It's in this case that Alec Baldwin brought a live round on the set, correct?
Correct.
There is zero evidence in this case that Alec Baldwin loaded that live round into that gun, right?
Sure.
Correct.
And after this, and you turn to the next chapter of this case, is when the order came from you all, meaning you, the prosecutors, Detective Hancock, to order the testing on the firearm, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Wasn't a good question. As this case moved forward, after what we just discussed, you, Detective Hancock and the prosecutors, made the request to the FBI to order the accidental discharge test, right?
I don't recall when that request was made exactly.
Well, forget exactly when it was made. Do you have any general recollection?
I don't.
Okay. Are you testifying that you don't know whether it was after the PDQ search?
I don't recall.
Okay. And at that time, when that test was ordered, you knew that Mr. Baldwin had told you that he had just pulled the hammer of the gun and not the trigger, correct?
I don't recall.
Okay. I'm going to refer.
Again, like, she's the crime scene tech. Like, why is he going into all of this with her? Like, she's just the one that is taking photos at the scene, gathering the physical evidence, like whatever Alec Baldwin's statements to the police and testimony to the police. Like, it's just, I mean, this is just going on forever and ever and ever until the end of time. And it feels like this is the wrong witness to be going through all of this stuff with.
Your recollection. I need to find it. And while I'm doing that, you did assist in the taking of the firearm withdrawal. You were involved in the requests coming from the team, right? I'm referring to you, the prosecutors, Detective Hancock, right? You understand when I say team, what I mean?
Yes.
Okay. You were involved in the request from the team to the FBI about what tests to order throughout this case. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And these were very much group decisions that you made. Of what you would test, fair?
Yes.
And everywhere in this case that you went, Detective Hancock went, right?
Yes.
So when you were at the church, the day that it happened, Detective Hancock was there, right?
Yes.
And then, when you were at the truck search, she was there, right?
Yes.
In the precinct with Seth Kennedy, she was there, right?
Yes.
At the PDQ search, she was there, right?
Yes.
And every time something happened in this case, you all would meet with the prosecutors to keep them updated, correct?
Occasionally, yes.
Well, when you say occasionally, investigate Poppell, what do you mean by occasionally?
I mean that I was not always in direct contact with them about every single thing that would occur.
I'm going to approach and show the witness. Yeah, she has a copy.
Well, she doesn't know.
Page you're looking at, I don't know what line you're looking at. You told me I have a copy, I'm assuming it's the previous transcript.
It is. Again,
Page
it's
and line, please.
the body worn camera, 10/21/21.
Page and line, please.
Page
Oh
3.
my God, that look that he just gave, that side eye. Oh my goodness. You can tell he is not used to being talked to in this way in the courtroom. I don't know which side I dislike more. But let's just, I'm going to go back just to watch that again. I'm sorry. Let's catch this again.
10/21/21.
Page and line, please.
Page 3, line 1.
They are really hating each other right now. And And, we can laugh about it here. We are not in the courtroom. We are watching this from outside the courtroom, and, we could have fun with it. If I'm one of the attorneys on either of these teams, I am in excruciating pain over the sort of lack of professionalism within these interactions between the two of them. I was wondering how long will it take before this happens in this trial after it happened so much in the first trial, with a different defense attorney. And he's got his own sort of response to it that's different than Bowles a little bit, but oh my goodness. Where is this going to go in the rest of this trial? Whew.
Same objection, Your Honor.
What is it?
Ms. Poppell is not Ms. Poppell is not in this transcript.
Well, what are you doing? Asking her to refresh?
She was there. I'm asking if it refreshes her recollection.
All right. Overruled.
That smile on the witness's face right now is she, you know what that is. She's feeling like Carrie Morrissey is there, like defending her. So she's probably really enjoying Carrie's snark right now, because she's like, thanks for having my back here. And she's very much disliking this defense attorney at this point. And, hey, I don't entirely blame her for that, but yeah. All right. Let's try to finish this cross-examination at some point, shall we?
Does that refresh your recollection about what Mr. Baldwin told you at the scene?
Not particularly.
Okay. Would it be helpful if you saw the video from the lapel camera of you and Mr. Baldwin at the scene and listened to it? Would that be helpful?
No.
That wouldn't be helpful to you, Investigator Bob?
I'm not denying that these statements were made, but I do not recall all of the information that was being stated at that time.
I understand that, but
I have a fair answer.
you're here to do your best, right?
Yes.
And you want to be fair to Mr. Baldwin, right?
Yes.
So you don't know that if I show you the video of you at the scene, it won't refresh your recollection?
He's arguing now. He's arguing with the witness. If she's saying it's not going to refresh my recollection, you kind of have to take her word for it. Like, you can't just start bickering with the witness. That is being argumentative. So that's probably, the judge now is probably telling him, hey, you got to chill the F out.
Investigator Poppell, are you willing to watch the body-worn camera, the lapel, from 1021 to refresh your recollection at a break?
Yes.
Yeah. And you would agree with me, it may refresh your recollection, sure?
Yes.
There you go.
And whatever information you had from Mr. Baldwin at the time, well, let me ask you this. Withdrawn. Did you tell Mr. Baldwin, don't worry, we're going to find the source of the live ammunition, or words to that effect?
I don't recall stating that.
You don't deny it, though, do you?
No.
You and the team end up ordering the accidental discharge test, I think you call it the drop test, on the firearm in question, right?
Yes.
And when you all ordered that test, the FBI told you that this test may very well destroy the gun, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay, well, let's, I can't put anything on her screen. So I'm going to show you an email in a minute. But you do agree with me that you were involved in the team's decision to send that firearm off to the FBI for that testing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That firearm that you told me earlier in my examination was something that you were entrusted to keep track of and to protect, right?
Yes.
A piece of evidence that you knew was critical in this case, correct?
Yes.
And the FBI told you in no uncertain terms that if they do this test on the firearm, it would alter the condition of the firearm, correct?
I don't recall that.
Okay. We're going to pass up an email to you because I can't show you on the screen, I don't think. You can? Okay. We can show you on the screen, apparently. As I understand.
Is there a reason you can't just walk up and just?
Well,
Listen, you can look at it too, so
The
just come up
start.
here before,
I have it, right? Okay, we have it.
they have it.
Are we doing it?
I'm just going to pass up.
Okay, but I need to look at
It's just, you know,
it. No, there's a,
My goodness. Okay, we're gonna fast forward.
hey, can I have a second?
yeah.
Hey,
Wait,
I
she
have not
has to-
reviewed this. Okay, can I have a second?
Yes,
Oh my goodness. So much spice today.
What's the portion that you expect to refresh your memory?
She's on the email.
Yeah, but what is the portion of the email that you expect to request to refresh your memory?
do you all want to be on the recording for this? Let's just,
Point out to me how this is
Well,
supposed to
first of all-
refresh your memory.
Sidebar.
just, if she can look at the whole document and see if it refreshes her memory,
That's
okay?
exactly what I was going
Move
to do.
on.
Maybe have a sidebar instead of having all this play out in front of the jury and in front of the cameras. Everyone.
And you see your email address on that email?
Yes, I do.
Well, let her, see if she can refresh her
Of
memory.
course, I just wanted to point out her email.
Uh-huh.
The tension is just palpable. Good Lord. Come on, guys. This is a Quinn Emanuel attorney. This is a big law attorney. I was expecting more. Ay. Justine Baroque, I feel it in my bones. That makes me want to sing like, I feel it in my fingers. I feel it in my toes. Sorry, this is not a December trial, so maybe that's not an appropriate song to sing. It's not Christmas.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay.
Take it back. Thank you.
You know what? Maybe everyone's just hangry. They were just ready for lunch.
And it is true, right? You're on this email, correct?
Yes.
And on April 21st, 2022, which is after the search of the prop house, you and the team sent the firearm for testing at the FBI, correct?
Yes.
I apologize. I think I've been handed the wrong thing. Can we approach?
Oh my!
You can have my copy. I'll take yours then. if you want.
Hang on.
If she's wrong,
May we approach?
uh-oh.
May we approach?
Yes.
Carrie Morrissey, everyone. This is her courtroom. The judge just happens to be there. Like, I feel like at this point she's like bullying the judge. I have never seen this kind of thing where like the prosecutor is able to like bully the judge. This is like such a weird world that we're living in this trial and in the previous trial. And this New York attorney is just like, what is happening? Like, who is this woman? Oh my gosh. Okay. Fast forwarding. Although here's a good question. The Stag, Legalbytes, how much of this is the judge's fault? A lot of it, actually. I mean, the judge is the one who has the ability to to decide the rules of how things happen in her courtroom. It's up to her to enforce the rules of like how conduct is supposed to happen in the courtroom, how the attorneys should be conducting themselves in front of her and in front of the jury. So she really is not great at enforcing those rules. I mean, remember, they're not supposed to have any speaking objections. They're not even supposed to say the basis of the objection out in public unless they are approaching. She just doesn't
Sorry
enforce
for
any of
the
these rules.
interruption. I'm going to ask the court reporter to read back the exact same question. Please.
And on April 21st, 2022, which is after the search. Oh, I'm so sorry. And on April 21st, 2022, which is after the search of the prop house, you and the team sent the firearm for testing at the FBI, correct? Yes.
And that was truthful testimony and accurate testimony that you just gave, correct?
Yes.
And at the time that you sent it to the FBI for accidental discharge testing, which I believe you discussed on your direct examination, didn't you?
So, sorry, really, really quick, because this is a question that's relevant to now, and I will forget it if later. Igloo Pop, why is she reading it out now? Because the attorney requested her to ask or to read out the exact question that he asked just now before all of this stuff happened. He wants to make sure that the same question is exactly asked as it was before.
Yes.
Okay. So at the time you did that, you knew that the testing would cause this firearm.
Sorry.
Oh my. Okay. More sidebars. Cool.
At the time that this
is so messy.
At the time that this testing was ordered, you knew that the firearm would no longer be in the same physical condition you recovered it in, correct?
Yes.
Let's take a break. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take our lunch break.
Okay.
Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court, and please don't come back until 2 o'clock. Okay? 2.
Wait, sorry. Don't come back until 2 o'clock. Let me just make sure I get that.
2 o'clock. Take our lunch break. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court, and please don't come back until 2 o'clock. Okay? 2.
Okay. So we've got a 2-hour lunch break now. Surprising.
All right, we're in.
Okay. I'm so used to like having to rush during these lunch breaks. So that's a surprising nice little break that we'll get. Okay. Or are they going to have some arguments first?
Your Honor, as I indicated,
Housekeeping.
yeah, as I indicated, we're just gonna provide a laptop to investigate the break. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we have, I will get this up to live. Ooh. Okay. Thanks, Court TV. I feel like I'm in the lobby of the W Hotel. Just like waiting to check in or something. Okay, I'm gonna mute that while we get our questions here. But that is some nice on hold music by Court TV. All right, cool. Let's get these questions here, and then we're gonna take a break, and then we'll end the stream. It's gonna replay into the afternoon stream, and yeah, we'll close it out on that second stream. So, okay. Debbie Faison Cook, Legalbytes, how does a defense attorney become a special prosecutor? So in this particular case, I can't remember the exact reasoning for why the DA, the Santa Fe County DA, decided that they couldn't put on this case. They originally tried, I think it was the Baldwin team that gave them a really hard time. I can't remember the exact issue of what it was, but they basically said, okay, we are going to step back from actually putting on this case, from trying this case, and we will be pulling in some people that are going to become prosecutors just for the purposes of this case or these two cases. And it's kind of like, it's a similar kind of concept as being able to bring in attorneys from out of state who are not licensed in New Mexico, like Alex Spiro and Luke Nickus, they're not New Mexico attorneys. Most of these attorneys on the defense are not New Mexico attorneys, but they're able to be pulled in specially for this case through pro hac vice designation, which basically just means that it's just for this limited case that they are requesting the ability to practice law in New Mexico just for this. They're not going to be representing, any other cases or any other people. So it's a similar kind of thing that these attorneys on the prosecution side are being pulled in by the DA just for the purposes of this particular case, so that the DA can distance themselves from the actual prosecution. I don't remember what the exact issue was, but that's essentially how that happens, is if they've determined that they either don't have the resources or they need to take a step back for one reason or another. Sue B, question, what do you think he is getting at? It seems so long and discombobulated. I mean, ultimately what he was really trying to get at is the quality of the investigation here, right? He's trying to say this wasn't quite a solid investigation like you guys are trying to make it out to be. It could have been a lot better. The question is, like, after all of that effort, what does that really mean for Alec Baldwin's case? Like, if he's able to tie that in by saying, look, we think that someone else sabotaged the set and that they were trying to get Alec Baldwin. So, I don't know, like something along those lines. But like, if you don't have any information for that, it's really hard to like make that argument. Especially when you've already got someone else who has been convicted of involuntary manslaughter and is currently serving a sentence, and that person is not Alec Baldwin. It's someone who's not even an actor celebrity. It's Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. So it's like the idea of sabotage on the set for this is still a weird argument to make, in my opinion. But like the best that they can really do is say, well, you guys didn't really do the investigation that you should have done. Okay, I think that the prosecution has also indicated themselves that they know that it wasn't the best investigation. It wasn't a perfect investigation. Mistakes were made. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't rely on certain aspects here. It's not like red Solo cups, right? It is red not.
Solo cup, I fill you up.
So, it's not quite at that level. But anyhow, El Borate, Legalbytes, was Indy on the set of Rust, exonerated photos. She was not on the set of Rust. I'm trying to think how old she was in October 2021. She was around a year old at that point. Yeah, she was definitely living with us. Nowhere near New Mexico. I will say that. Daniel Nagy, Legalbytes, what does special prosecutor mean? How are they different from standard one? Okay. Well, I already answered this one. But yeah, it's basically where someone's just pulled in just to specifically to be the prosecutor on that case, just for that case. They're not hired by the DA or anything. English Bottle Cap, maybe HDR has agreed to testify if AB can get his team to focus on Seth Kenney. I think the bigger issue for her is potentially incriminating statements for her own behalf if she testifies. So yeah, that's more of the issue for her. And I think that the wheeling and dealing would have been more likely done with the prosecution side rather than with the defense side on this. Because the prosecution has the ability to give her immunity for her testimony, for example. Raya Sun, what's with all the speaking objections? I'm so confused. I thought the judge said no to this. It's all they're doing. LOL. I agree. Yeah, she definitely has the rule for it. She's just not enforcing it. That's the problem. And that is on the judge. So, Jerry Roth, Legalbytes, do you think the defense is trying to set up, since Seth was a prop master, that they are trying to set up his props are faulty? Yeah, I mean, they definitely are trying to put as much blame on other people as is possible. Seth Kenny, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, Sarah Zachary for sure is going to be coming up at some point. So, the defense has every interest in trying to sprinkle around blame among other people to sort of deflect from any sort of blame that Alec Baldwin may have had. But I don't know that that's going to be terribly convincing for the jury. I feel like, make the effort. Yes. Make your points, get that across to the jury, but they're spending a lot of time on it that just feels like it weakens the case, in my opinion. English bottle cap, was it a reasonable, thorough, or exhausted search? Yeah, that was a point that the defense was actually getting at, and that was helpful for them to make the point that they were making. But it took a long time to get there, a very long time to get there. Pamela C. Legalbytes question: why are pre-interviews done? Seems to me it could taint their testimony on the stand. No, it's very common for people to have meetings ahead of their testimony. It's just to talk about, it's like, you don't want to be coaching a witness. You don't want a witness to be coached by either side, but to talk about what to expect in the courtroom. This is what we're going to want to know. This is what we anticipate the defense is going to want to know, is like this kind of information. Maybe you review what the statements that you've made in the past. Maybe you review some body cam footage, or like other things that are going to help your recollection for when you testify, if you're the witness. So like they are helpful. So yeah. It's very common. Miss Fitness 3 question: did he need to create foundation to ask? To ask about the thoroughness of the search? Yes. There always has to be some kind of foundation for any of these questions, right? Is you've got to lay some kind of a foundation. But not as much as he actually went through. You can still do that fairly quickly. Sue B, question: why does this matter for AB? By the way, AB looks like he's asking himself, why did I hire this guy? Yeah, Alec definitely has a lot of expressions today in the courtroom, for sure. Yeah, why does this matter for AB? I don't think it really does. I don't really think it does. I think that from the defense perspective, what they're trying to get at is like, look, but for all of this other stuff happening, this wouldn't have happened. But you can also have multiple people in a chain of events that could have decided differently and could have caused a different result, right? Because like Hannah Gutierrez-Reed could have also made the argument, or, they probably did, in fact, make the argument that if Alec Baldwin didn't pull the trigger, as, the forensics testing, the firearms testing shows he had to have pulled the trigger. So like their argument is like, or could have been, or was, if Alec Baldwin hadn't pulled the trigger, none of this would have happened. Like everyone can make that kind of an argument of like, someone else didn't do what they were supposed to do. That still doesn't mean that the person who's in the hot seat now did everything that they should have done. You know what I mean? LK Rydan, Legalbytes, has AB had the same lawyers the entire time? Or have they changed at any point during the case? I think they've been the same. I don't remember him getting any new attorneys at any point. And Legalbytes, even if he gets the technician to admit that she was drunk the whole time and did all investigation with a Fisher Price CSI kit, how exactly does that in any way help the defendant? I don't think it moves the needle all that much, personally. Jerry Roth, Legalbytes, isn't this badgering the witness? Badgers, we don't need no sticking badgers. Not quite. It's giving her a hard time, but that is allowed on cross-examination. There were some points in the cross-examination where he was where he was actually arguing with her a little bit, but the judge brought him in real quick. I mean, Carrie Morrissey objected very, very quickly, and the judge was like, don't do that. El Borate, Legalbytes, if live rounds were not supposed to be there, can AB still be guilty? Yes. Two things can be true at the same time. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed can be responsible for her part. Alec Baldwin can be responsible for his part. Seth Kenney can be responsible for his part. I mean, he was not suspected in any of this at any point in time. But like, if the investigation had shown that Seth Kenney was responsible for bringing in those live rounds, then yeah, like he also bears responsibility. Then whoever brought those live rounds on set is responsible for that terrible decision or terrible negligence or whatever that was, in misfortune, even in bringing on those live rounds on set. That does not negate the culpability of anyone else for not doing what they were supposed to be doing or for doing something that they weren't supposed to be doing. Asymmetric, Legalbytes, is the judge allowed to intervene if she doesn't like a question, or does she have to wait for an objection from opposing counsel? She can respond on her own, or she can intervene on her own, for sure. But it's got to be more than just not liking a question. There has to be an evidentiary reason, like something under the rules of evidence. That is a reason for why that question is not a good one. Sue B, question: do you think Alec Baldwin and his wife are thinking, dear Lord, why did we hire this guy? Maybe, could be. I don't know. I like I said before, Hilaria Baldwin certainly seemed more tense today than she did yesterday. Patrick Masters Productions, Legalbytes, I'm convinced that this is Bowles under a Spyro mask. It could be. And to Da at Legalbytes, have you never played Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney? Carrie is Francisca von Karma, lacking only the whip. That's so funny. I actually have not played it. It's one that I should. I actually looked it up and I saw that it is on Switch, so I can. That's one that I definitely should be getting for myself. Maybe I'll ask Mr. Bites to get it for me as a gift for something. I don't know, because he's the true gamer in the house. But that could be something to play just on the side, so I can finally have all of the references. I understand the references, a lot of the references to Ace Attorney, the Phoenix Wright game, but it's only fair if I actually play the game. English Bottle Cap. Question: are the private conversations between the judge and the attorneys also taken by the court reporter? Yes. All of those sidebars, the snide bars and the sidebars, those are all recorded on the transcript. So we can't hear them, but they are all getting taken down on the record. Sue B, question: does the court reporter record their banter? Yes. Yes. This is how, like, I've seen some like videos that were like dramatizations of like really terrible depositions, like where the they basically have like actors play out like what was in a deposition transcript. And there are some that are absolutely insane, but all of it has to be taken down on the record because that's the purpose of the court reporter. They can't leave anything out that is actively on the record. So yeah. Emily Atelier, Legalbytes, could this be a technique from the defense to make it look as though the prosecution is messy? Yeah, I mean, they can definitely, make that kind of a case, make that kind of an argument, but they can do that while not looking messy themselves. I would argue that the better way to do that is with a much sharper cross-examination where you get in, you get out, you show like, okay, this is ridiculous. You said that you did a full search. Now you're saying it was a reasonable search, which means you didn't actually search everything, did you? And you're looking for these tiny little things in these very big boxes, and they're all stacked up to the ceiling. And you're saying you checked every single one of them? Are you sure? Like, are you stating under penalty of perjury now that you absolutely checked every single one of those, and you are certain that you got all of the live rounds on set? Okay, all right. Like there are ways of making them look lazy, making them look sloppy, without having to go the sloppy route yourself. Ricky 12 question: is the prosecutor's strategy to interrupt so much that it screws up the defense? That could be a strategy. That could be a strategy. However, I will say, as much as I don't necessarily like the way in which Carrie Morrissey her overall demeanor when she has these objections and whatnot, especially the speaking objections from her chair, and the way that she's just like bullying the judge. There, a lot of her objections actually are pretty valid. Like I've agreed with her on quite a few of these. It's just the way that she does it that is just so like, oh, come on. Like it's just so snarky. You don't have to be this rude to the other side openly in front of the jury. English bottle cap question was asking the witness if she thought AB guilty gameplay. Yeah, I think so. I think so. He knows better than that. He's an experienced attorney. He knows better than to ask her if she thought that he was guilty of a crime. That's like way outside the rules of evidence. I think, even just like a recent graduate from law school who has zero trial experience, but has gone through, a class on evidence, knows that you can't ask that question. That's just ridiculous. There's absolutely no good reason for asking that, other than to try to get gamey in front of the jury. And random question for Legalbytes: what kind of attorney are you personally, if you feel comfortable asking only out of curiosity? Civil litigation is my background. So I have a tiny bit of criminal experience, but just through internships during law school. But other than that, it's been primarily civil litigation. So, and currently right now I'm overseas, so I'm not actively practicing with cases at the moment. But I don't know, that can change if there's the right situation that comes up. But I obviously, like, it makes it a lot harder for me to actually go in and be and be someone that goes into the courtroom when I'm not in the US right now. So, and even that is going to change at some point. Okay. This is the end of the questions. So I am going to cut it off here. And this is going to redirect everyone into the afternoon stream. If you're not redirected, I am also going to be putting up social media posts with links and everything so that everybody can find it. It is already public, I think. Let me just double check that this. Yes. Okay, good. I did do that. Good. Finally, I'm getting on top of this stuff. And the poll, I remembered it just before I saw Hezo one. You also mentioned that. So, okay, ending the poll with 1,000 votes going into day 2. How do you lean regarding Alec Baldwin's involuntary manslaughter charge? 48% said need more information. 27% said guilty. 24% said not guilty. So it's still very much like, most people are saying that they need more information to figure this out. Totally reasonable at this stage in the trial, honestly. But again, I also understand why a lot of people have some strong opinions about this case already. All right, folks, with that, I will see you guys at 2:00 East Coast time when the jury comes back. And as soon as the court feed is showing activity that is not just, people sitting on mute, then we will go live with it. But I hope to see you guys in the afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me today for this stream. And for everyone that was super chatting, buying memberships for other people, you guys, I appreciate all of that so much. It really does help the channel, and all the folks that are liking the video as well, helping to push this out for more people to see so that more people can join us. More eyeballs on all of the videos is always a good thing. And of course, as always, thank you to the mods for helping to make sure that the conversation is, it's thorough and people are bringing their opinions and their perspectives, but doing so in a way that we can all be respectful of one another. So thank you again, of course, to all of the mods. And I hope to see you guys in the afternoon, 2:00 East Coast time. I'll see you guys real soon.